Okay, Councilwoman Barch.
So one of the things that we've avoided doing in the past when naming parks is naming it directly after a neighborhood in order to make sure that they know it's a public park and not a neighborhood park. So for example, in the Talus Ridge Park, obviously I think that that should be just either Talus Park or it could be Foothill Park, but we've got a lot of other bigger parks I think that are going to end up coming along Foothill Boulevard. So I don't mind Talus. It's also off of Talus Ridge, so that makes sense to me. On B, I have no problem with Pinnacle at all. On C, I have no problem with Meridian. On the Sunrise Park next to the firehouse, again, I worry about naming it Firehouse in case someday the firehouse moves, just because I know Chief has talked about the location is not ideal. Likewise, I would rather not see Hillside because there's a Hillside Road that's down in the Saratoga Hills development, if I'm not mistaken. So I'd like to avoid confusion there. Trailside is fine. It's next to the Canal Trail Park that's going to continue on and connect into the other areas. So for me, that's just fine. I don't mind that at all. And then Heron Bay, I have no problem with that as well.
Okay. Other comments?
Any other council members?
I just had so what were you saying on the Foothill Park one?
The suggestion on that one was to change it to Talus Park instead of Foothill or Talus Ridge Park.
And what you're saying, Councilwoman, was not have it Talus Ridge Park?
Not Talus Ridge, because we don't want to name it after the entire development. That we've kind of tried to avoid that, where it's a public park, but Talus doesn't bother me. Foothill doesn't bother me either. I just wonder if we're going to have a bigger park.
That's what my concern, like with Foothill being such a long road, are we going to have a larger park that would deem that to be more applicable?
Possibly, yes. Just
Is that the park that has the trailhead in it for going up the
Which one?
the wash area?
The Talus? No.
it's right at the entrance.
No, the one with the wash is Meridian.
That's Meridian, okay.
It's right at the entrance of on Talus
one
Ridge
down
and Foothill.
Where the mailboxes currently are?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I think Talus Park for that one is fine.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be good with those suggestions as well. And changing the Firehouse Park to the Trailhead Park or Trail Park, whatever that was.
Okay.
The reason I just put these names, I sent a email to, I don't know if I sent it to everybody. You did it. But you know, these are the names suggested by the residents, so that's why I put those forward. But I don't necessarily think that getting rid of the word ridge is going to crush anybody's dreams. So, okay.
So that answers my question. They did have some input on them.
They did.
Okay, I'm fine with what's been suggested by the other two.
Okay.
So the one that's by the current fire station, that got input from Sunrise Meadows?
That was just the Talus Ridge one.
Did we get any feedback on that one?
We didn't. These are just suggestions from staff, which is what we've done in the past, is we've brought suggestions to the council and are open to suggestions or however you want us to approach this.
Is there any reason why, I mean, the nature of that park is with mountain biking, but there's nothing that's indicating that?
I thought I remembered reading something about some of the people thought that maybe in the future it wouldn't necessarily be a mountain bike park. I don't know why it wouldn't be.
It's not going to be a grass park. It doesn't allow for a grass park, and it's not feasible for mowing.
The only reason I would wonder about that is I know that further to the north, there is a very large development that's planning an incredibly large bicycle park, mountain biking park.
Okay.
And so I wonder if maybe we want to somewhat reserve that.
Because the reason why I like the other names, and I'm hung up on this last one, is it's either the street, so you know where it is, or the neighborhood, that you know where it is. And so this one, all of a sudden, is this
the street
anomaly.
Yeah, the street next to it's 1200 North. So
right, that's the problem.
That's not
so
cool.
Firehouse, I mean, that's why that worked, but to your point, if it's not always a firehouse, but that's why I was thinking, so if we did something along mountain bikes, people would then recognize that is that trail, that mountain bike trail park, I don't know.
Mountain Trail Park?
What about Burning Park?
No. No suggestions.
I like Mountain Trail.
For Greek gods.
I like Mountain Trail. I do like that because there's sort of mountain bike in there, there's a trail, and it's a trail, it's a bunch of trails in there.
Do we already have anything that would be confused with that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Mountain Trail. I don't know. Then it has more of a story because it has a trail, mountain bike trail, so it sort of all plays in together. I don't know. From a marketing perspective, I think that might be better, a little more obvious. Like the other ones are very obvious. That's on Pinnacle, Pinnacle Park. So I don't know. That's just my thought.
That's fine.
So Mountain Trail.
Okay. sounds like we have direction, so
Okay.
if there's no other comments, we'll move forward with that.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I do believe that is the shortest work session, other than the one we canceled. Okay, with that, I will move us to the City of Saratoga Springs City Council Policy Meeting tonight, Tuesday, June 19th, 2018. What time is it? 6:09 PM. Present tonight is Councilman Porter, Councilman Barch, Councilman McComber, Councilman Wilden, and Councilman Podeska. And myself, we have Councilwoman Barch going to offer our invocation, and then we have Isaiah from Troop 1623 going to offer our Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Father who art in heaven, how grateful we are to be gathered as residents of this great and beautiful city. We are grateful for the beauty that we have all around us, for the opportunities that we have to serve one another, and are grateful for our incredible volunteers in this city. Father, we ask that thy Spirit will be with us, that we will make wise decisions, that we will be able to listen to the desires and also to the needs of those residents that we serve. And we say this in the name of Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Amen.
The microphone.
Will the audience please arise? Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, we have appointments to the Library Board.
Mayor, Council, Melissa couldn't make it tonight. She's under the weather, so before you, the staff report to appoint, let me get the names right, Joy Bratton and Pam King, thank you. Sorry, trying to find the names on my list here. They've both been on the board. I believe they came on to fulfill a term, and they're just willing to continue to serve for a full term. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them as best I can.
Any questions? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the reappointment of Joy Branton and Pam King to fill the terms ending June 30th, 2021.
I'll second.
I have a first from Councilman Wilden, a second from Councilwoman Barch. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, Porter?
Aye.
Barch?
Aye.
McComber?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
Podeska?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for your willingness to serve again. We have a presentation from the American Public Works Association.
I'm Marv Allen. I currently am on the board with the Utah chapter of the American Public Works Association, and each year we have a Public Works Week, a National Public Works Week in May, and we as an organization sponsor a fundraising activity for some scholarships that we give out each year to those that are pursuing an education in the public works field. But also we have a series of awards that we give out to honor individuals and projects, individuals that are making a major contribution in the public works field and projects that merit recognition. And this year, a project for Saratoga Springs was nominated, the Marina Pump Station Project, and was selected as the American Public Works Project of the Year. And so I appreciate the opportunity to come and make a presentation to the city, as well as to the engineer and the contractor that were involved in that project. I wonder if it would be all right, I'd like to turn the time just over to Shane Bennett for just a minute to describe that project, and then we'll make the presentation of the awards, if that's okay.
Thank you, Marv. First of all, good evening, Mayor and Council. Big thanks to you for all of your cooperation, your funding, your support. Big thank you to Hanson, Allen & Luce, and a big thank you to COP Construction to be able to be part of this project. The Marina Pump Station is the big pump down there, pump house down there at the harbor, down there to be able to feed secondary water, you know, which is a direct benefit mostly to the south end of town, but also to the whole city to help save in water, not only irrigation water, but also take some stress off of the culinary water system. Couple challenges we had down there, you know, working on that edge of the Utah Lake is just basically a remnant of Bonneville, and basically the same as working on the Great Salt Lake. But to be down there on the shoreline and to be able to excavate and build that structure required some tall shoring, some great big I-beams to keep that shoring back from the hydraulic forces. I know one or two of you were able to come down there and visit it, and it was pretty impressive. I know Shelley and you were down there also, and to see the hydraulic forces trying to collapse that in on us. COP Construction did a great job in maintaining that shoring. The dredging was another challenge. Bringing all that silt, we hydraulic pumped out approximately 4 feet of silt from the harbor in order to keep water flowing into the intake structure. And, you know, side benefit is recreation. But COP Construction and their subs took all those silts and pumped them up to a drying pond and then hauled them off to a landfill. And that was, or not a landfill, but a fill location. But that was a challenge to keep those pumps running and to keep that flowing. We installed a 30-inch ductile iron line from the pump house up through an existing subdivision up to a tie-in point near Redwood Road. It's easy enough to go put in a 30-inch water line through a vacant field, but to put it up through an existing subdivision has its challenges. We were lucky there were only a handful of residents because we had to keep ingress and egress for them. And then we protected as much of the road as we could, saved costs in rebuilding, and protected as much landscape as we could. Probably the last thing, and Hal was a big help on this, an algicide injection pump in order to keep toxins away, you know, when the lake does develop those problems, and make everyone feel good and keep safe PI water. So a couple of those quickly in a nutshell. But a big thank you for partnering with all you folks, with Hanson Allen and Luce and COP Construction. Thank you.
Stay up here. Anyway, it's a very complex project and was well deserving of this year's award. So I'd like to make a presentation. If we could have a representative of Hanson Allen and Luce and COP Construction come forward as well. I'd like to present this plaque to the city in honor of the award for the project. And we have also a plaque for Hanson Allen and Luce and for COP Construction. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we have the presentation from the Police Department for the Victim Services Update.
I know most of you know me. I'm Holly Johnson, the Victim Services Coordinator, and this is Francesca Madern, and she has been a victim advocate with us since, I think, September, I want to say. So the last time we did our presentation, we did it to the Bluffdale City Council, since we do serve the crime victims in Bluffdale as well. So it's our turn tonight to come to you real quick. And I know we sent you a little, I don't know what you would call it, paragraphs or whatever, summary of what we've been doing, but I wanted just to quickly mention a couple of things, if that's okay, that we've also been up to that I didn't mention. Responding to mass casualties events throughout our country is a big topic with victim advocates nationally, and we've been working on forming a plan of how we would respond to something like that. Hopefully it would never happen here, but I think, as everyone in America knows, we have to kind of be ready for that type of thing. So in October, we were part of a mass casualty drill held at Camp Williams, and what victim advocates do is we're ready to immediately start working on a family reunification area or some place where people can come to one central location when they're looking for their loved ones that are maybe involved in the mass casualties, so that police officers can concentrate on doing their job, securing the area, removing the threat, and then the advocates, we tested out some forms that we'd like to use in the future, and they worked really well. So we worked with actors and it went really well. We learned some things that we want to do different and be ready for. So that's just one thing we're working on with our colleagues throughout the state, is to form specific plans for victim advocates and how we would respond to that. And one other thing that we're doing lately is the Office for Victim of Crime has worked really hard the last couple of years to come up with a toolkit to address vicarious trauma in crisis responders, law enforcement, EMS, firefighters, and victim services. So we're able to present this information to all the officers in our department, and we got to do part of them today. And it's just something that we're mindful of, to work on tools and resources that people that respond to trauma can use in their life to stay healthy and stay on the job and have hopefully long, wonderful careers by, addressing how traumatic events affect us and what we do with that. So those are just a couple of things that we've been doing. Do you have any questions for us or at this time?
Mostly just a thank you for all you do. I know you do a lot of work, and
You're welcome.
it's a very important part of the healing process for those victims, so thank you.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure. Thank you.
I actually had one person who
Yes.
used your services, and of course staying anonymous,
Sure.
approached me and just said how impressed and how blessed they felt to have that support when they were in one of their lowest points in their life.
Great.
And so
That's good to hear.
it's just nice to know that, that we have that service available, and then hopefully other people who maybe don't know things like this, we can get that out there more and make it more known as we get on public record and things, because it's there for the people for a reason.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have the presentation of the SR 68 Redwood Road widening. We love seeing you guys come because projects start, but we love it when you're gone.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to come give you an update on the projects that are going on SR 68. And we're actually kind of closing down the previous project and starting the next phase. We have selected Geneva Rock to be the contractor for the next segment, and they should be starting work July 9th. So in that segment, just for a review for everybody, is from, I think it's Village Parkway, all the way up to Lakeview Terrace. And we're widening that from 2 lanes to 5 lanes. And we're putting in signalized intersections at Ring Road and also Stillwater Drive. And then we're also doing some work at a much-needed intersection of Pioneer Crossing and Redwood Road, and putting a continuous flow intersection in there. And so you should see a lot less delays at that intersection, especially after, yes. But actually, a lot of the work is done kind of off to the side, so it shouldn't be as impactful as everybody imagines, but there will be some impacts. So kind of just, oh, and then I did want to mention that we do have a Meet the Contractor night on July 12th at the Talons Cove Golf Club. And that is at between 5 and 7 p.m. So everybody can come in and ask some pretty good questions to the contractor. The contractors are going to be there, UDOT's going to be there, and also we're going to have our public information team there as well.
Perfect.
So.
I appreciate you guys keeping northbound open in the mornings, southbound in the evenings. And we're kind of a two-way city.
Yeah.
That way in the morning and evening. And reaching out to the residents. David, could you make sure we get this on the city's social media so they can attend the meeting and they're aware of the construction starting and what lights are coming in, because we get a lot of questions. Are you really putting a light here?
So Matt, would you prefer pitchforks or shovels?
Shovels if they're going to help move the work quicker.
I was going to say, obviously shovels.
For every complaint on Facebook, if they shoveled one wheelbarrow of dirt for every complaint on Facebook, we would have been done 6 months ago.
Without the contractor.
Matt, can I ask-
Just to let you know, some of the, back when we started this project, some of the comments were, can we get it done sooner, or you know, what can we do to make that happen? And so that's why it kind of split out into 3 separate projects, so that we could get you guys some relief, especially that Grandview intersection was kind of the bottleneck for quite a while. And so we were able to advance that and get that done, or else you'd still be stuck the way it was.
You like Riverton? Because that's a bigger project done all at once, and it's caused, I mean, it's
But we
more,
do
yeah.
appreciate your patience, you know, it's been a pretty detailed job trying to get that done, and with a lot of impacts to adjacent properties and things, and so we do appreciate your cooperation.
And I'm glad that we have a bike lane on both sides now, because
Yes.
people were complaining on Facebook that you only put a bike lane on the one side of the road when it was,
And actually,
you were just doing work, but yeah.
those bike lanes are going to be extending all the way down
Yep,
to
it's gonna
Village
be
Parkway
great.
as well.
Great.
I do have, oh yeah, go ahead, Sean, I have a
one question also, sorry. So one of the things of note in the second phase is the bike signal that's going to be put in at Pony Express Parkway.
That was removed.
Okay.
Partly because of your requests.
Okay.
You know, and also the fourth leg of Pony Express is going to be coming through, and we didn't want to put it in and then just take it right back out.
Perfect, okay, that's what I wondered, so thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Have you, when you're actually with, I know you're saying it's going to be minimal on Pioneer Crossing, but there'll be a couple days, even 3, where it's going to be impactful when you have to actually make the changes in your lining and stuff. Have you ever done or considered using, we have the road, Riverside, and then coming over to 4th South and actually putting a temporary light system there to allow people to come out, just to take that pressure, because you could really alleviate a ton of pressure down there, and then people who want to go to Eagle Mountain can come back up, but the majority of that traffic is really going south, and it would be able to sort of bypass that almost completely. The only people you'd have to worry about is one lane going straight up into Eagle Mountain, going straight on Pioneer Crossing. Just a thought, maybe look at that, because it's a decent road that doesn't get a lot of traffic, and if it's like 3 or 4 days where we're doing a bypass, potentially it could be really a good opportunity.
We can mention that to the contractor and see if it would work for them, but also we would need your concurrence from the city to divert state route traffic.
Yeah,
on there.
and that's why I'm saying right now, I'm one of 5 saying, I'm willing to do it, because for me, if that means it cuts 2 days, whole days, if they can actually get in there and really do it, if we could, really, instead of 2 weeks trying to work around everyone trying to get through, I don't know, I think it's worth it. But.
And that could be a question that gets brought up at the Meet the Contractor night. They might actually, I'm not sure how detailed their schedule is yet for that type of situation.
But just maybe when you're talking to them, mention that is an opportunity, because it is really a very easy detour. It's not like one that takes you down through tons of neighborhood. There's no homes on that street yet, so it's actually pretty.
And I'd like to actually introduce Andrew Jordan here. He's going to be the resident engineer over the construction, so he deals with the contractor directly, and just that way, so you kind of have a face to the name.
Great, thank you.
Perfect.
Any other questions that you'd like us to address?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Good night.
Okay, public input. Time has been set aside for the public to express ideas, concerns, and comments. If you're here for the public hearing, item 1 or 2, please save your comments for the public hearing portion of the meeting this evening. Please be respectful in your comments. Please avoid repetitive comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. I believe Owen is timing tonight. Yep. Oh, Dave is. Okay, we've got it all set up. Is anybody here for public input at this portion of the meeting? Okay, if you'd come up and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Doug Robison, address 2, and that's not Robinson, but Robison, just Robinsons are lost. 2331 South Cimarron Avenue. Just trying to make it clear, because it always gets entered wrong in Saratoga. Just a quick concern I'd like to voice in terms of as the city continues to grow. Obviously, there are infrastructure challenges. The one that we've been experiencing every year for a period of time is the pressure on the secondary water. And it, for the last 2.5 weeks, it's kind of dribbled out until the lawn browns, and you're going, what's going on? And then when you finally look at it, you're going, oh, there's no pressure. So I don't know, as we are considering expanding and building, how are we going to take care of, the residents and the infrastructure that's in play now so that we make sure that proper services are provided throughout the time that it's needed and those services don't degrade over time.
What was your address again? Sorry, where were we at?
2331 South Cimarron
Oh, Cimarron, okay.
Avenue, yeah, Jacobs Ranch.
Yep.
Right there at Ring Road, where we're getting the light, which is great. That's why we need the light, is the Maverick.
Okay. Jeremy, can we check on the water pressure up there with somebody from Water Department?
Yeah, we've been dealing with this. What we've noticed is because the marina's been so good at providing water, the Jacobs Ranch well hasn't had to run as often. And so when it was running, it provides actually quite a bit of pressure increase. And so when it's off, the pressure is within our acceptable level of service, but it's lower than maybe the residents were used to. And so about a week ago, we went out there and adjusted the settings so that the well comes on sooner, as opposed to waiting to the reservoir empties halfway before coming on. It's coming on now when it's only a quarter empty, and so that should help address it. Again, the pressure wasn't dropping below what we set as like the minimum standard, but because it's operating less than they've been used to in previous years, it probably is lower than they've had in previous years. And so we've made that a setting, and so that should have been an improvement we've seen recently in the last week or so.
So one of the, go ahead.
I was just going to say, but yours currently is just driven?
No, it's finally back up, so as of a few days ago, I think that's what it was. A few days ago, it finally came back up.
I was concerned we had one off. It's like, did you stick a rock in his pipe?
So Jeremy, what pressure should people ideally design their systems
that was
for?
my question.
Good point. 30 to 40 PSI. But when that Jacobs Ranch, and it depends where you are in the pressure zone. So at the top of Jacobs Ranch, they're in the upper end of the pressure zone. So they should design it for, again, that 30 to 40 PSI. If you're low in the pressure zone, you may see up to 60 PSI. And again, that Jacobs Ranch well was pushing those pressures up to 60 PSI in the top of the zone, where that would be an unusual situation if you were only relying on the reservoir. And so the pressures were somewhat artificially high because we were so deficient in source. That well had to run 24/7, which is not an ideal situation.
Where's that?
And now that the well can rest, and you're seeing the latent pressures just of the reservoir, it's it was back to those 30s or 40s. Now again, we've changed the settings so that well should come on more frequently.
So one thing, and David, I know we do this like every summer, we put in the newsletter and stuff, but if we can remind people to build their systems, because we have a lot of new lots, right? Comments for a lot of people moving in, that they build it at 30 and 40. Even if they have 60 now, doesn't mean they'll have 60 forever. But my concern is they put 12 heads, because 12 heads can be supported with water pressure at 60 PSI. But as soon as that drops to 30 or 40, that's why you'll get that trickle. And so a lot of landscapers, when they're coming in, to save costs, they'll put a ton of heads on one zone. And so we really want to make sure, and so the recommendation I think is 4 or 5 at the most. And so those are the kinds of things, and that's what I ended up doing. My landscaper did it to me, and so I actually went in and retroactively came in and added 3 more zones, and that helped me a ton. And it sounds like we've got some solutions also, getting them some higher PSI above the 30 to 40, but yeah, long term I don't know if that's going to be the best solution, so.
In long term, when we have more interconnectivity, that area of Jacobs Ranch doesn't have a lot of interconnectivity north and south. And so, but they're close to the reservoir. So if that well's off, that's the pressure the system was designed to provide was that 30 to 40.
Yeah.
It's just that they were used to seeing that well operating 24/7 all summer long, which was creating a 20 PSI pressure spike, which now that we have more source, it's not on as often.
Yeah, okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public input. Appreciate the council. I know it's not normal that we have a discussion during public input, but where water's been a issue the last 2 years, I wanted to do that tonight. So thank you to the council for indulging that discussion. Reports, Councilman McComber and I met 2 weeks ago and picked a planning commissioner. I noticed it's not on the agenda tonight. Can we get that done?
He couldn't make it this week, and so we postponed that till the next meeting.
Perfect. So we do, for the
Good.
planning commission, we have a planning commissioner that we will present to.
The most amazing applicants. We seriously are getting some of the best applicants, and it was like, it wasn't easy to choose. It was hard because there were so many good people to choose from. So it's great that so many people want to volunteer in our city and help.
Okay, city council reports. Podeska?
I was just going to report that Sage Hills has invited us on city council to join in their Battle of the Books, and so I've officially joined the ranks and accepted that challenge, and so they're excited about that. The invitation's open to the rest of the video as well, if you want to join in. But yeah, just wanted to report on that.
Okay. Anybody else with reports?
So it's funny, my son at Saratoga Shores won first place in his age group, and he's like, so you gonna do it, Dad? Because I told him about that. And I was like, no, we'll have one champion in the family.
Got a question?
Go ahead.
Okay. He's just been really excited. He's, we got his mic chewed on so he can be heard on YouTube.
You keep looking at me, so Mark, I gave you a preview of this. A lot of Aspen Hills residents has contacted me a couple times. They'd like to see, there's concern around basically the weeds on the berm. I know we're calling it natural grass or whatever, but if Rick or someone could come back another time, we can invite the Aspen Hills. I know at least one of them's probably watching. At a future council meeting, discuss kind of long-term plans, and if we can resolve it, and maybe like pictures of what it should look like, and if they don't feel like we can take care of it through that method, what like sod would cost or whatnot, if that's available. So.
Got a comment along those same lines. A request from a resident in Aspen Hills about possible scout projects for planting trees around the train loading area in the park specifically. So as the residents are waiting in line to get on the train, that they'll have some kind of a shade area. So they're wondering if what that might take to do that, and who they should contact for that. So I don't know if you want me to just have them get a hold of you, Jeremy.
So would that be a half mile long? Because that line of people gets about that long when they
Well,
want to go.
I think if we get enough trees in the grass areas, maybe we can weave the line through the trees. I don't know. But yeah. And then one other comment is just for future reference, and we don't need to actually go to all these, but it'd just be nice to know, was we had no calendar invite for the Lakeshore Trail Open House. And so that might be nice for us to know those kinds of things in the future, just so that if possible, we can have the opportunity to attend those. Like I said, we can't always attend those, but when we can, it's kind of nice to have the opportunity. So that's it.
Mayor, can I, on that presentation, Mark, I know around Shea Park, I know we talked about potentially the mid-year retreat or whatever. I'd prefer to do it in a council meeting, and we can give them a specific date so that the residents can participate and see that. This has been brought up a couple times, so I just want them to know that as a council, we do care about their concerns and have them have visibility into whatever decision that we make there.
I had a question, I guess, for the rest of the council. I spoke with staff, and correct me if anything's changed, but there was not a lot going on that was necessary for the July 3rd meeting. I just think with a lot of residents being out of town, I know some of us are going to be out of town. I was just wondering if there was any interest in canceling that meeting.
I will not be here.
You won't be here?
I won't be here.
I mean, I'll be here, but if there's nothing of consequence, I just don't want to hold up a development if we...
Right,
As long as
understood, yeah.
See, I'm going to be here as well, so as long as we're not holding up a development,
I'll be
that's
here as
fine.
well.
But if we've got things that we need to address, then
So maybe
When I talked with staff, there wasn't, but it may have changed, because I know things change every week, so.
So you'll have three if we have to, and all of us, the three of us will be here can, but maybe let's play it by ear. Let's look at it next week and see how things are shaping up for the 3rd.
If we need to, only urgent things.
Yep, and we can keep it short too.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, from an economic development standpoint, I mean, some of you maybe saw it in the news or on Facebook, but we did have the groundbreaking for Fat Cats, the movie theater and bowling alley and indoor arcade. That was very exciting. Quite a few people showed up for that, and they're expecting a spring of next year open, and we're hoping that even sooner rather than later. We kept teasing them about that, and maybe we can bring our shovels and be proactive and help them there, right? But no, so it was really great to see people, the leadership from all over the country for Fat Cats, as well as the different groups. The mayor bowled a strike. They set up a makeshift bowling alley, and we were giving him a hard time. You don't want to miss that one, but no, he did bowl a strike. So it was a good time, and we look forward to having that in the community so that we can, as the mayor said, play in Saratoga Springs as well as live and work. So thank you.
Okay. Mark, anything from staff?
We will have need for a closed session. Real quickly on the July 3rd, I think right now there's a few items, but looks like we possibly could punt that. We'll know more tomorrow in staff meeting, so we'll let you know if we're going to go on that or not. And then just if we could hit a closed session at the end of the meeting. Thanks.
Okay. Public hearings. We have the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget amendment, resolution R18-34.
First of all, I want to introduce Justin. He is our new budget, debt, and grants administrator. You want to stand and say hi? This is Justin Sorensen, and he'll be working with all of you through the budget process.
Think of him as a much taller, bearded Daniel.
So, budget amendments. This is our last budget amendment for this fiscal year, since the fiscal year is almost over. So most of the budget amendments that we're doing are adjusting either to defund or to increase a little to account for the costs being a little higher than the estimates that were given when we actually did budget for these. And there's a few operating budgets as well that needed adjustment. And I just need to know if there's any questions concerning anything that is on the attached budget amendments. None?
This is probably more for Jeremy than for you, but it just, with the replacement meters for the fixed system, is is that going to cover all the meters that we need for the city, or is this like we're getting half of them this year and half next year?
We are, I think we're down to 200 in the culinary and 500 in the secondary.
Okay.
And then they'll all be compatible with the hardware, but that doesn't mean every year
we're not going to have to replace a few.
Still going to have an ongoing replacement need.
But this increase should cover the entire city.
This year was a one-time thing because we hit it so hard and heavy. I think we had several thousand replacements this year, and then back next year we should be back into a normal cycle of normal failures.
Just the
and whatever.
Thank you.
So on that note, just for the audience's sake, we're installing a fixed network radio read system. We already do radio reads for our water meter systems, so our secondary and our culinary. We're going to be installing a fixed network which would ultimately allow you to see real-time what your water consumption is at your home. So it's a very cool project. It won't be implemented till probably the end of this summer, but this is kind of in preparation for that. So in case anyone's interested, it'll be kind of a fun technology leap for us, and people can real-time see water leaks and things of that nature. It should be a very innovative way that we can help monitor and protect people's water consumption. So good change for us.
Just as a side note, the towers are starting to be installed this week. So there's 13 antenna going up in the city. So they started standing them up. The contractor was out this week. Loch Lomond, in fact, there's one on top of the signal, on top of the street light on the signal over here, you may have seen, and then the rest will be freestanding monopole structures throughout the city. I think the ones they're going to prioritize is the one over at Loch Lomond and the one up here, because they're going to kind of start in the north end of the city and work their way south.
Or comment on the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget amendments? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing for the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget amendments. From the council, is there any further discussion? Then I will entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget amendment resolution R 1834 dated today.
I have a first from Councilman Wilden.
A second.
I have a second from Councilman Podeska. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Councilman Podeska?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
McComber?
Aye.
Barch?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We have a public hearing for the 2018-2019 municipal budget, Resolution R 18-35.
Mayor, City Council, this budget is with a no tax increase, so this is not including a tax increase for the $45,404 that's being imposed upon us by the state. So it is up to you whether you approve this tonight or whether you would like to do a tax increase for that amount. Is there any, I have the list of everything that changed on the staff report between the tentative budget to now. There's 5 changes there. If you have any questions concerning that as well.
Okay. We'll open this up for public hearing and go to the council. Is anybody here for public comment on the fiscal year 2018-2019 municipal budget? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing for the fiscal year 2018-2019 budget and go to the council. Any comments? Councilman Wilden?
I do have one, so this is the tentative budget, right?
I think this is it.
Okay, this is the final, that's fine. It comes to us like 15 times.
Right,
to
you
motion
adopted
every-
the tentative budget back in May.
This is the tentative, almost final, no, I know. Yeah, one thing I'd like to see
No, it'll be fine.
in the future, and I don't think it necessarily needs to hold up the budget tonight, but maybe at the next council meeting, I'd like to see simplified budgets by general revenue departments. And what I'd like to see, for example, a good example is like the building inspections department, planning, or engineering, or like the fire department even, where they have revenues that come in besides sales tax and property tax. So I'd like to see what is the fee revenue that comes in, and then minus the direct expense, and then minus the indirect expense, and then we can see a net. And then we can see exactly what we're contributing from sales and property tax, or if we're funding other departments through one-time fees. I think that will give us as a council a better way to see what are we funding through one-time fees. I know that information's available in like the 80-page documents we get, but I'd like to see like a simplified approach on that, so any department that's on the general revenue fund have that simplified approach. Does anyone have concerns behind it?
I don't have any concerns. I think it's great. It just increases transparency. I mean, as a citizen, I used to sit out there and when you guys would go through the budget, and it's an 80-page document, and it's not a page turner. And so I think anything we can do to make it more transparent and more clear how taxpayers' money is being spent, I think that's better.
And I'm not being specific to any department, but any department that's generating, I shouldn't say revenue, but fees. For service. Because they're providing service. See, are they covering, and they don't necessarily have to, but are they covering their expenses, indirect and direct, with these fees? Or how much property and sales tax are we contributing to them? Or in some cases, we may see departments that are actually moving things to other departments, and I think that's insightful to see what are we funding and moving out that are really one-time fees, like building inspections or whatnot.
So is that in addition then to the enterprise-type funds? For example, like where the sewer already has the in and out, you can have that, do you want that pulled out as well? Or are you just talking those that come out of the general revenue funds?
Because utilities already have theirs. It's
Right.
a little bit more complex than what I'm suggesting, but the utility already has that, and that's pretty easy to read through.
If I could, I appreciate that comment. We'll play around with something and bring you a draft at the council retreat in August.
So, and then, Mark, if we look at that, we can make adjustments later to amendments, okay?
Well, it won't necessarily amend the budget. We'll be still preparing our final budget document. At this point, it's really kind of, it sounds like a reporting, kind of a monitoring conversation for us.
But if Wilden has an epiphany and we need to move $1,000 from bucket A to bucket B, we could do that. Okay.
We can kick whatever bucket he'd like.
And in the future, I would prefer that it come as part of the budget. So we're looking at, are we funding any like ongoing expenditures that aren't variable with one-time fees? I think it's just a tool that we need to have when these other type of various discussions come up. And I'm very supportive to approve no tax increase. So.
That was going to be my comment. You took it right at the end.
You wanted to beat you to it.
No, so again, just for the residents and those 4 of you watching on YouTube, so we did not raise property taxes this year. If you see an increase in your property taxes, it's because your home is worth more money. And
they give a lot to Facebook.
Yeah, yeah, and the school did give a lot away to Facebook. So yeah, but so really what you're looking at is, I mean, we're a very small portion to the school district and to the county and others, but at the same time, we're not increasing our rate. So I think that's a great thing. That means we're able to live conservatively and do live within our means. And so I appreciate the staff and all the hard work to make that happen, the finance department, to make sure that every bill gets paid and we still have money at the end of the day. So thank you very much. And then I don't have any adjustments to this fiscal year 2018-19 budget versus the changes that you outlined. I have some things that I'll be bringing to the council at the retreat, but we can handle those in amendments. So it's not necessary until the very end of this budget. So thank you.
I just find it unfortunate that we're having to have our residents, through their sales tax, spend money to support and to fund a private, nonprofit, but nonetheless a private homeless shelter that isn't in our area. And we're taking the sales tax monies that could have been used.
You might want to be a little clearer, because we live and breathe this, but what you're saying, I think, is not clear to there's a lot of scouts and stuff here, so I'll probably help them.
So the state legislature has deemed in their infinite wisdom that as their way to help with the homeless problem in Salt Lake and a couple of the other places, that the entire state, no matter if you are in Panguitch, Utah, or Saratoga Springs, Utah, or wherever, shall pay a certain amount of money to the state out of our sales tax. So we have a sales tax bucket, and they're going to take it right off the top, a certain percentage, and they're going to give this to specific homeless shelters that are private homeless shelters, private entities. So they're taking public money and giving it to their specific private entities. So basically they are taking public funding and giving it to private people, which is basically theft. And they're choosing winners and losers. And that's money that we could be using to help support our parks. That's money that we could be using to help support our police. That's money that we could be using to help support our fire department. That's money that we could be using for a lot of other things. Luckily, our sales tax revenue is strong, and we don't need to put that on the backs of the residents through a property tax increase, and we can handle that difference. It's not a large amount of money yet, but like I said, it's a percentage. And so what's going to happen is, as our sales tax continues to be robust and grow, and as our economy grows here in the city, that number is going to increase. The actual dollars will continue to increase. So just so you're aware, right at this point, we don't need to do that. We can handle those changes. But the state legislature is picking winners and losers. So just be aware of that as you are looking at who you're voting for. And be and be aware also that there are definitely leadership positions where they're actually blackmailing our representatives, where our representatives vote the way they should, and then they get called and taken to the woodshed basically and said, if you don't do what we want you to do, they are going to hold all of their bills that they've been working on and not allow them through. So the state legislature has been very interesting this year, and not exactly the most honest. So
is that a taxpayer-funded woodshed?
That would be a yes, a taxpayer-funded woodshed, indeed.
If I could, on that point, I do want to say that Representative Jefferson Moss was very supportive of our city. He went against leadership and the grain and voted against those bills on our behalf, and so we truly appreciate Representative Moss and the fine way that he's upheld our interests as a community. But
yeah, he's been very supportive.
It is obviously those are the challenges that we face up with the legislature every year, and we appreciate his service, and so he deserves kudos for the positions he's taken.
Yep.
Well, Mark stole my little addition, but I would also like to thank Jefferson Moss because he has been very supportive, especially on this issue. And to reiterate what was said, it's while we're not having to raise taxes, these are it's an opportunity cost. There are things that we will no longer be able to fund at the level we might like to because this money's being taken. And I think it's also important that residents are aware that this is the first time the state has done this, but that doesn't mean it's the last time. Now that they've gotten away with it once, this will be a continuing thing that we're going to see, I think, more and more often of the state legislature starting to dip into city coffers so that they don't have to raise taxes, but they can fund it on the backs of the residents without being transparent about it.
They recommend to us to raise taxes.
So.
And you notice, I'm one of the not so politically correct sometimes on here. We noticed that we pointed out Jefferson Moss. I would find out who your state senator is in this area because he did not fight like Jefferson Moss did.
Okay, sounds like 4 viewers on YouTube have a Google search. Okay.
13. Hey, Mayor.
District 13, you can look it up.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes.
Not to that, I agree with everything that's being said, but I wanted to point out the operating revenues from 2018 to 2019 went up more than the operating expenses by 60,000. So we continue to be a conservative budget. To me, that means if there is some real necessities in various departments, if they have needs, they shouldn't hesitate to come and ask for that because we are doing well. And that excess growth of 60,000, it factors in that 45,000 and $4 from the state, so.
We're conservative.
Okay. I will entertain a motion on that.
I've made all the motions.
I'll move that we approve the the 2018-19 municipal budget resolution R18-35 dated today. Can I include our certified tax rate at the same time? Is there a reason I can't?
What?
Can I do our certified tax rate at the same time?
There's a public hearing.
I know, but can I item number 2? Is there a reason I can't do that at the same time?
Mr. Attorney?
Okay. And approve.
Oh, we haven't called it onto the agenda.
Okay, we'll do separately.
I'll second the original motion.
Okay, I have a first from Councilwoman Barch, second from Councilman McComber. Any further discussion on the motion? Podeska? Aye. McComber?
Aye.
Wilden? Aye. Barch?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We'll go to business item number 2, since it's fresh on our minds, the certified tax rate for the general revenue fund for fiscal year 2018-2019.
Anything we need to know?
No, the tax rate actually went down because, of course, values went up. So the tax rate is considerably less than last year, so.
And just for those out in the audience, our taxes are kind of strange. So basically say, you got this much money last year, you're going to get the same amount of money this year, except for any new growth. So new residents moving in, that's the only increase you get. And then they fudge the tax rate to make it happen. So they split that up.
So we get the same amount of money.
Yeah, government accounting, exactly.
Yeah.
It's called revenue neutral tax
Yeah.
rate.
Revenue,
So
yeah, there you go.
it generates the same amount of money
got a
despite
fancy name.
values going up.
Right. So, yeah, so then you still might see an increase in your personal, but that's because your values have gone up. Anyway, it's a little screwy, but it makes it so that the city is collecting the same amount every year. It makes the property tax a very stable revenue source, so that you have sales tax, which varies widely with the economy, and your property tax, which stays a little bit more level and consistent, so.
Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the certified tax rate for the general revenue fund for fiscal year 2018-19, resolution R18-36 dated today.
I have a first from Councilwoman Barch.
Second.
I have a second from Councilman Porter. Any further discussion on the motion? Porter?
Aye.
Podeska? Aye. McComber?
Aye.
Wilden? Aye. Barch?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Going to make some adjustments to the business items. I would like to move business item 5 up, followed by item 4. Last time these individuals waited patiently till wee hours of the night, and they were both here. So we will move to item 5, the approval of McLaughlin-Noland annexation.
Staff.
Oh, loop for staff?
Staff juggle.
Any questions on this? You have the resolution in your packet and just ask.
We've seen this many, many times. But maybe just give a quick, there are a lot of new people, new faces, maybe we can just give a quick 30-second. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, let's give it, just so that people know what's happening. The city's growing and it's fun.
And just for kind of on the procedural issue of this as well, this is the last step that you would take to prove this. After this, then it's the city recorder's job to finish the final paperwork, send it into to the Lieutenant Governor's office, and then get the annexation plat filed with county recorder. And that'll happen within the next month or two.
So this is an annexation that we've been working on for about a year and a half. And it did go through a protest with the county, and we ultimately prevailed on that protest. It is for 59.41 acres. It's being annexed into the city of Saratoga Springs. You approved the annexation agreement a couple of meetings ago. So this is the final step to get this thing annexed. It is being annexed as mixed residential. That's the zone that's been assigned to it.
And the location, maybe to help people know where this is at?
Yeah, this is, let me see. So, I don't really have a big picture, but,
The curved road is Old Saratoga Road.
Yeah.
That was a good picture, actually.
That one?
That one, yeah. That
Yeah.
curved road is Old Saratoga Road, and then on the far left, that straight one is Pioneer Crossing.
right. And this actually, north is not to the top, north
Not
is
quite.
to the left, which is confusing. I find it very confusing. They keep switching north and south and east
And then that
west.
water you're seeing on the top right, for the residents there, that's a North Marina. We're going to have another marina in the north end of the city now.
Right, that's already within the existing city limits, but that will be dedicated as part of what's illustrated here, which is the North Shore development. So there's an image. This shows the proposed annexation and the adjacent parcels that are currently have an application for a rezone, which you'll see very soon. And that all of those will make up the new North Shore neighborhood plan, for which we have an application as well. So this is the annexation plat.
Nora, when does the actual dedication of that marina land happen? Does that happen with the development agreement, or does that happen with this annexation?
You know, I'd have to look at the development agreement. Kevin?
The development agreement with the development of the property. And that will happen when they need their open space credits.
Right. Okay, any questions?
No? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the McLaughlin Noland Annexation North Shore DR Horton Inc. applicant ordinance 18-13 dated today.
I'll second.
I have a first from Councilman Wilden, a second from Councilman McComber. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Okay. Councilman Porter?
Aye.
Podeska?
Aye.
McComber?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
Large?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 4, the Wildflower B4 preliminary plat, Nate Ship, DAI applicant.
Okay, so this is another plat before you in Village 1 of Wildflower. To give you an idea, the white area, there we go, that's the Village 1, the first half of Village 1 of Wildflower, and we have looked at a number of plats in that area, and this is yet another one. Again,
Real
this
quick, we
is...
went and did a tour. We went and saw yesterday.
Yeah, that's what I
quite a few of
understand,
us.
which is great. So this, again, facing the other direction, is a copy of the entire Wildflower development. This particular plat is in the lower, that lower area of Village 1. And here's a copy of the plat. It's exactly as it was shown in the community plan and the village plan, so it's totally consistent with what we've seen in the past. 26 lots, 26 buildings, and it meets all of the provisions of the community and village plan. So we're recommending approval. Planning Commission recommended approval as well.
Nate, as the applicant, would you like to come up in case there's any questions from the council? Do you have anything you'd like to add before we start discussion?
My name is Nate Ship. I represent the applicant, and I appreciate all the time and effort the staff has put into this, and would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Any?
I have one question.
Councilman McComber?
So I don't have any concerns with this, but one of the things that I noticed, and we were talking as a council, and I'd just like to hear from you, on the north side of this development, this, like that lower piece, the dirt has come up really, really high behind those homes. Is that going to be coming down, or, because that's like pretty, I don't know if it's just a temporary thing while you're moving dirt around, but what is happening there?
Sure, and I appreciate that. The overall grading plan will have a rise as we climb the hill. We're coming up a hill, and so there will be a hill, but the existing dirt that's there now will be coming down some. It currently they're using the weight of additional dirt to help compact that area, and they'll be cutting it out down.
So we saw a fire hydrant. Would the fire hydrant height, is that about, I mean, you weren't there, but there was a fire hydrant that, because fire hydrant, you wouldn't be burying it.
What we're talking about.
Because there is the fire hydrant and your dirt was this much higher than it, so then it would be like, to try and get down to that.
So
we're just getting a lot of questions from residents, as you can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Not being there, I think I know which fire hydrant you're talking about.
So we're right in the middle of your whole thing.
It's the one this big.
But yes, I believe we put our fire hydrants at the elevations that will be existing grade, so if it was there, it should be there.
It was installed, so, but I think that would be a good argument when you're talking to the residents, especially, I look at the two that live up there because they're getting a lot more of the comments and questions, but I think that obviously it caught my attention real quick. I was like, whoa, that's like really high. You couldn't even see the houses anymore.
Right.
So,
Well, I think there was a little bit of a misconception too. It was kind of, from what I understand, the residents thought that there was going to be a retaining wall directly behind their houses, where the backyards would start, and then it would go up again from there. And from what I'm seeing on your grading plans anyway, the front yard is up higher, but then along the side of the house, it's going to be cut dramatically down at that 30% grade or whatever it is that we allow, and then they'll have walkout basements. So it'll basically come out, the back of those yards will actually come out at the top of the Harvest Hills yards, if that makes sense.
I'm bummed I didn't get to walk the site with you, but yes, that's an accurate description of our intent.
And they're required, no drainage can leave the lot, so they're required to do a sort of a V at the bottom, so it actually goes back up before it hits the Harvest Hills lots, so that rocks and runoff and those kinds of things will end up in the ditch rather than in the yards.
And then down through the normal drainage swells into the storm drain or wherever it eventually goes.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilman Wilden, this is in the area you met with Resident Porter.
Yep.
And Nate, right?
Yeah, and just to compliment the applicant, or Nate specifically, and I think your engineer or site plan.
Yeah.
I don't know his name.
Chris and Greg were both out there at different points.
There was a few residents, not a ton, maybe 8 or 9, that had some concerns, and they met on site and satisfied their concerns and were very friendly, so I appreciate you working with the residents on that. That shows a lot that you're willing to do that, and it's not a whole lot of residents, but you took your time out to take care of them. And then the one thing, I'm fine with everything here, and it's nice to see not a lot of conditions, so thank you. And then I'm sure you're doing it, I don't go on site, but just making sure the dirt gets sprayed down periodically, because that's the complaint along my road that I'm not getting it, so I don't complain about it, because I'm not directly on it, but their house is getting caked with dirt and whatnot. And you can't mitigate 100%, but if they just make sure that they're doing it on regular intervals, that's all we can ask, so.
Okay. Any other discussion? Do you have some? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve Wildflower B4 preliminary plat with all staff findings and conditions.
I have a first from Councilman Porter.
I'll second.
I have a second from Councilwoman Barch. Any further discussion? Okay, Barch?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Podesta?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
McComber?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, we have item 1, the Public Treasurer's Investment Fund.
This is just a resolution that the state is having us fill out and approve for the 2 signers on our PTIF account, our Public Treasurer's Investment Fund, which is Debbie Elms, our treasurer, and myself. The copy that was in the packet shows the grayed out, but there's a hard copy that will be signed in the thing that has our information and stuff on it. Yes. It didn't take in the electronic, so.
Okay, any questions on this from the council? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the Public Treasurer's Investment Fund Accounts Public Entity Authorization.
Okay, I have a first from Councilwoman Barch. Second. Second from Councilman Podeska. Any further discussion on the motion? Porter?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
McComber?
Aye.
Podeska?
Aye.
Barch?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We have item 3, Lexington Green Preliminary Plat and Development Agreement.
Mayor and council, this is a project that's been in the works for several years. LeVar seeks approval for a preliminary plat for 100 lots, as you see here. The Planning Commission recommends approval with the conditions that you have in your staff report. Concept plan you see here, showing the single-family lots. There will be a future apartment development coming in, which will go to Planning Commission for site plan approval. And just some summary items here, if you want to go through those or not, up to you. But this is basically, as you see here, the layout of the preliminary plat.
Okay.
Mayor and council, along with the preliminary plat, there's also the development agreement. Basically, so the development agreement just kind of reinforces everything we're talking about. It also deals with the 2009 agreement, basically stating that once these are approved, once the preliminary plat is approved, and once it's recorded, that resolves the 2009 agreement, and we basically move on. A couple points about the development agreement. One of the exhibits was missing, if you noticed in the packet, and that was because it depended on what the council decided tonight with the preliminary plat. Once the preliminary plat is approved, that will go in as the exhibit, basically as the site plan approval. It's kind of a moving target as we were shifting, or as we were discussing kind of some of the last minute engineering and planning items. So at this point, when you approve the preliminary plat, that's going to go in the development agreement. As well as on the apartment site, the only way to make the open space work, it just wasn't even close with the current open space code. Staff is recommending that they comply with the 2009 standards when it comes to the open space. It just simply will not work with the extra garages that are required in the small space. They are providing a number of different amenities as part of the apartment complex, as shown on the plans. So based on that, I'd be happy to answer any questions specifically about the development agreement.
Okay. Anything you'd like to add before the council discusses?
Just a few highlights, if I might. Thanks for your consideration. My name is Paxton Guyman. I represent the applicant. I live in Sandy, Utah. A few highlights for your consideration. You might recall that last year we were here before you with a 45-acre project, and there was some consideration expressed that you would like to see corridor preservation for UDOT. It took quite a while, but we achieved that, and we're proud to report that. The eastern 14 acres of this project have now been sold to UDOT for transportation corridor purposes, which I think is great for the city's long-term transportation planning. As you might expect, that caused us to have to do a fair amount of redesigning and scrambling, but we have come up with a plan that we heartily endorse, and a few things that you should note. The subdivision, the single-family subdivision portion of this plan, it only provides for 100 units. Now, I know that might seem dense, but in the context of the history with that vested right of 6 units per acre, it's actually 12 units less than it could be if we were to try to enforce that. And we've done that. Hopefully you'll see it and receive it as a gesture of good faith, because it makes more sense. We're giving up 12 units. It still works. And because of that concession and working with staff, we've had to come back and say, for our apartment project to work, to keep the vested rights for the apartment, we need to fall back under the 09 ordinances that were in effect when that agreement was first entered into, to keep that density. So it's somewhat of, I guess you'd say, a compromised approach, but it still works, and we are here after a long time, which we do not need to repeat, but a long time of efforts working, I think, cooperatively with staff. We appreciate Gordon Minor, David Stroud, Jeremy, Kevin, and Mark. Literally all of your staff have been involved with us to get to this point. So we would respectfully request your approval of the preliminary plat, knowing that we will still work out whatever final sort of engineering minutia might need to be worked out. and the development agreement. Thank you.
We've reviewed this time and time again. I just think it's helpful for the people who haven't been over the years. This is Pony Express, 8th West, which is just west of Vista Heights Middle School. So that just to give you some context. So it's Pony Express is widening. It's going to be a very major roadway, and so obviously a little more dense here. This is more appropriate to have denser populations closer to major roads. People don't want to build a 1/3 acre or 1/2 acre estate home on Pony Express Parkway for that. And I also do want to thank you for working it out with UDOT and getting that preservation, because that's part of the Foothill and Mountain View Corridor preservation. And I always hate, one of my goals, I mean, Jim will know this, we've been doing this the whole time together. One of my things is I don't want to tear anything down that was built during my tenure. If it's an old building, maybe a farmhouse, they choose to sell it because they're going to make a ton of money on their land, that's great. But I would have hated to have UDOT have to come in and tear down a project being built. So thank you for working that out with them ahead of time. So thanks.
So one thing, I actually misspoke. It's the 2009 ordinances for the entire apartment complex, not just open space. So Paxton was...
it's the entire project, yeah. And that's what I thought too, so.
Yeah, I apologize for
that's
misspeaking.
Okay.
And also, some of the original proposals of this, when they were discussing UDOT purchasing the property, came back with additional attached housing. So on the non-apartment portion of the project, they've gone down to just single-family homes, and so that's important to note as well. And of course, the reduced density down to 100 units instead of 112.
The density is allowed as 6. I want to say they're somewhere around like 5.3, 5.4 per acre now with their voluntary reduction.
Okay. There's no...
I have one question and then a comment. So there's a parcel L at the very top, it's top cul-de-sac in the single family going down towards the apartments. There's a small parcel that's called out right there. What is that?
Has to do with utility lines. I'll have Gordon, he can expound on that.
Yeah, it's not a building lot, obviously.
Well, I figured since it was a lot L or whatever it is, but so is there going to be a trail through there connecting the neighborhoods? Is it going to be, Gordon, do you know what that is?
There's the utility line.
Right. So they've shown, and it's not showing up on this particular plan, but they're connecting utilities from the future apartment area to the cul-de-sac area, and whenever we have utilities like that, they're required to go through dedicated open space. So I think that's the corridor you see there.
That's correct. Our engineer just confirmed that for us.
Excellent. Is there going to be some kind of a trail connecting the neighborhoods, a walk path of some kind, or is that just going to be open grass? What's the plan there? I couldn't tell by looking at the exhibits. Yeah. Because I realize we don't want necessarily a roadway connecting the houses to the apartments, but a trail might be nice for neighbors to get to each other more easily.
Yeah, it's just landscape grass now. I think when we come back for approval of the actual apartment project, we'll have a little more detail on what that buffer or the landscape will be.
Okay. I just wonder if, because the houses are coming in now, I wonder if so that the house residents know that that could be potentially a trail and not just grass, if we might want to say potential future trail on there or something like that.
That's fair. Just on parcel L?
Just on parcel
That's
L.
fine.
Just make that little note on there, just to give you that option, if that's okay?
No problem with that.
Perfect. And then there was conversation at the Planning Commission meeting about whether or not to have parking along Fairfield Road. And I'm just wondering, there was, in their packet anyway, there was some confusion as to whether or not, it sounded like they passed the motion saying that they would still allow parking, but then they actually recommended to us that we say there's no parking along there. So can we get some clarification there?
There was a condition of the one side be red curbed, basically. They took that out, but I think the word was strongly encourage that the city make that no parking. They didn't want to make it a condition.
And were they recommending one side or the other? I mean, I assume at this point, we're only curbing the south side,
Right.
that along the farm fields, we're not curbing
In this
that.
case, it would have been the south side, because
Okay.
yet the other side would be going once that property develops, if it does.
Is that because it's I mean, it's still a local road, and normally we allow parking on local roads, except for during snowstorms?
If I could, this was at the request of some of the property owners that are in the neighborhood. They've been very passionate about preserving as much road width as they can to move their tractor equipment and farm equipment up and down the road. So I want to make sure that their concern is represented. We met with the engineers last week to discuss this concept as well as a few other engineering housekeeping items, but this very, very passionately was requested by the property owners in that area to preserve that right-of-way width. And you're right, it is something that we haven't historically done. However, that was the request that was made by the public.
What's our actual pavement width through this, on this road, once it's curbed and guttered?
Once the road is entirely finished, there'd be 29 feet of pavement, 32 feet traversable pavement, curb face to curb face. Right now, there's 25 feet of asphalt out there. I'm not sure what we'll end up with in the interim. That hasn't been refined in the design.
Well, those are things, so when it comes to parking, you have to look at what can the, as far as your conditions of approval, what can you do here? And it has to be based on what the code says. We don't really talk about no parking, but you certainly, as a council, you supervise Mark, and at some point, if it becomes an issue,
Problem, we could look
you
at
can
it.
direct Mark to direct staff to mark one of the whatever side you choose as no parking. And we typically, we don't red curb because that's long-term maintenance thing. We'll put up signs that say no parking. So that's certainly an option at some point, but it really ought to be based on some sort of a traffic study we do at the time and actually see if it is a problem.
Would that cause more problems doing it after the residents live on that road?
We've gone back and red striped other areas, and they deal with it.
It's more appropriate to handle it outside of the context of a preliminary plat application approval.
Yeah, so I think that I would agree with that then from the recommendation of staff that we don't do it at this time, and if it becomes a problem in the future, we do the traffic study and fix that at that point. That makes sense to me.
And we do have the ability of how residents, it's very transparent to them how they can request traffic studies now. So that's available out there, they can look at. And I know it's already been stated, but I appreciate the effort the applicant you've made with the city staff and the work that they put into that, because we reduce the number of homes because of the easement or the right-of-way that you saved, as well as moving from townhomes to single and pulling off 12 units. You do have some vested rights, obviously, and so we appreciate you bringing that down to help us meet what the residents want within the abilities that we have, so.
And I think on the road width, just for future, I know we're not doing it in this, it's not an all or nothing. It could be just during daylight hours, during the summer, during farming season.
Well, I think one of the other things too would be as construction starts, we may need to mandate that the construction traffic park on the property versus on the road.
So we don't impede the farming activities.
So we don't impede the farming activities for that. I can see that.
That's a problem for
Yeah,
yourselves later.
but that's something that you should be able to self-police, I think, pretty well, so.
Although I'd like to see some of those little cars take on a combine.
I'd love to see a car take on a combine, it'd be fun.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion then.
I just had a question for staff. So on the code criteria where it has a couple can complies, are those being taken care of?
Yeah, those could just be conditional. As far as the planning ones go, they're very minor. Just some different types of fencing has to go in, that sort of thing. And so it'd just be conditional. It's not a big issue, just be conditional with your approval.
Okay.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the Lexington Green Preliminary Plat and Development Agreement, LeVar Christensen applicant, Foothill Boulevard and Pony Express Parkway, Resolution R18-37 dated today.
I have a first from Councilman McComber.
Second.
I have a second from Councilman Podeska. Any further discussion on the motion?
I just want to make sure that is on the record that there's not one person on the council or the mayor who was here approving the density on this property. This was done prior to this council. The vested rights for the high-density apartment complex was approved before anyone on this panel was on the city council.
Can I also
The notes reflect that.
add an amendment, please, that we have them add a note on parcel L that there could be a future trail on that?
I'll amend my first, along with the staff findings and conditions, that we have another condition that they will be able to potentially have a trail on Plat L, parcel L.
An amended first, an amended
Second approved,
second. Any further discussion on the motion? Porter? Aye. Podeska?
Aye.
Wilden? Aye. Barch?
Aye.
Comber?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so
Good luck.
Much appreciated.
Mayor, we have a representative here for item number 7 as well, if you'd like.
Perfect, let's do that. We will move on to the first amended development agreement for Lake Mountain Development. If I did not realize you were here, we would have moved you up sooner.
I apologize, I came a little bit late. Thank you.
Mayor and council, just a couple years ago, we approved this development agreement. It required the installation, improvement, and dedication of Foothill Boulevard. That's since shifted several times. Now the current alignment is off of the property and not adjacent at all. Staff recommends that you amend the development agreement to remove that as a condition of approval. We did talk about Harbor Parkway. I wanted to add this exhibit at this time since we're amending the agreement that actually specifies the development obligation for Harbor Parkway. They did come under our old standard with a preliminary plat application for the 24-foot asphalt width. However, the property to the south is undeveloped. When they come in, they will have to add that additional 5 feet of pavement width to comply with the current standard. So anyway, I have these, if you'd like to take a quick look at it. It's just Harbor Parkway, just with the regular standard cross-section. Staff it does not extend to the far west of the property because of the grade. Staff has looked at that. It wouldn't be feasible to put in a road all the way to the west end of the property, but it does go to the second entrance, which is consistent with your original motion. So this exhibit is consistent with your motion, but it gets more specific in the actual engineering details, and that's what's been reviewed as part of the preliminary plat application as well. So
And the applicant is completely aware of all of this as well, and...
that was one of the submittals
I just wanted to
that's
make
been
sure.
reviewed by several times by engineering. And so, just to throw that out there, we could amend the development agreement. At this point, we've got a lot of stuff that they're just really complying with the current code. It's not really, the development agreement isn't addressing too many special exceptions, so you have the option of not even adopting a development agreement. But again, the amended development agreement, first amended development agreement draft is in the packet, which the applicant has looked at and has accepted, and that's certainly an option as well.
Mayor?
Yes.
If I could, Harbor Parkway is not going to continue up because of the grade. Where we've asked them to pave to is the next roadway that will be coming out of their subdivision. We anticipate that road would continue down south and ultimately connect up with Foothill Boulevard at that next major cross-section. So we've looked at some preliminary traffic planning through this area, and we think that we've got some pretty good solutions for some of these changes. We appreciate their willingness to work with us on some of the things that they've previously done, and so if you have any other questions, we'd be happy to tackle those.
Okay.
Did you have a chance to talk to the applicant about why we changed the cross-section on our road, the problems and the issues that it's caused in these communities? Have you had a chance? Did they talk?
Well, so the thing is, it's kind of, they actually had the preliminary plat application.
I know they have the right to have the smaller, but have you explained to them how neighborhoods have failed because the cross-section's so small? You have a car on both sides parked on the road. Literally, you could barely get a car, an F-150. I've seen them have to turn around. They cannot get between two cars, and so it creates a very bad situation. Bad neighbors in the whole situation along fire safety. A fire truck is not getting up that road between two cars at all. So yes, you have a right, but I really strongly encourage you to go back and look at the safety of your community, the safety of your development, and the appeal. right? This is a beautiful area. I mean, beautiful views. And I just strongly encourage, you have a right to strongly encourage you to look at it. And even maybe at the very top where it's starting to, where there won't be as much traffic or something, just really strongly encourage you to look at that. And if you want to see, go up to Aspen Hills, go up to Lakeview Terrace, up around the bend as they're going into Saratoga Shores Elementary. It's a nightmare. So just giving you that to chew on and think about as you're working on your plans. I know you don't have to, but just wanted to let you know. Thanks.
Thank you.
One good thing, just to kind of address that, there aren't going to be any homes fronting on Harbor Parkway. They're all backing there. And then, like I said, the property to the south is not being developed at this point. When that does develop, they will have to develop to the 29-foot asphalt width requirement. No, for the entire Harbor Parkway. They'll have to extend it because what the code says is you have to have access onto a road that meets city standards. So when they develop that, they'll have to add the additional 5 feet. I don't know how that works with engineering and the crest of the road, but that's something that engineering can work out with the applicant right now. No, they're dedicating, because they got their preliminary plat application in 2016, which was before our change, they're complying with that standard.
So the new developer wouldn't be able to develop unless they condemned the house to get the width to widen the road? I'm confused.
No, it's vacant property right now to the south.
Okay, all right.
So they'll just add the extra 5, yeah.
Okay.
I think you got it.
Okay.
So I think that's mitigated quite a bit under the circumstances.
Okay. Any other comments? I will entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the First Amendment, amended development agreement for the Lake Mountain Development Ordinance 815 dated today, and include the new exhibit given to us by our attorney, Kevin Thurman. Go ahead.
Okay, I have a first from Councilwoman Barch.
Second.
I have a second, Councilman Wilden. Any further discussion on the motion?
So I have a question / problem. So this keeps being called the Lake Mountain Development.
I remember your comment from last time. We've actually changed the name on our preliminary plat. It's now called Westview Estates. I think it was just for consistency's sake, so that you guys understood that it was something that, yeah, exactly. The development agreement was.
Well, and I realize that part of your company name is that as well, so I get that, but I want to make sure.
No, but we actually changed the name based on the comment that you had last time.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, Westview Estates.
That's great. Thank you so much.
That actually is a good point, so that I could actually add that.
Will you amend this?
Isn't it Eastview?
I'm just kidding. And I've had that same comment, and I thought, like, no, it's on the west and you have a view. I'm like, okay. So
you hyphenated it? West hyphen view, because it's really an east view.
I thought the same thing.
I would suggest that we leave it as is, but just in the introductory paragraph, I'll just say AKA Westview.
Okay.
So we have.
I have to tease you a little.
No, I thought the same thing. We've had discussions a lot in our company about that.
I have an amended first for the attorney to change the entry paragraph to Westview. Do I have an amended second?
Yes.
Okay. No further discussion. Porter?
Aye.
Barch?
Aye.
Comber?
Aye.
Podeska? Aye. Wilden?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
And thank you for quarter-acre lots. Yes, we do appreciate the larger lots.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Okay, Title 19, General Plan Land Use. Well, so that's the last item. Let's do the minutes. I have a motion on the minutes for May 15th.
I'd move approval of the
Okay,
minutes.
I have a first from Councilman Wilden. Second. I have a second, Councilman Podeska. Any further discussion on the minutes?
Actually, I'm going to go through them, so do you want me to vote nay, or how does that work? 'Cause
There's nothing that you need to worry about.
There wasn't anything to worry, okay, or just abstain? Okay, perfect, thanks.
Okay, I have a first from Councilman Wilden, second from Councilman Podeska. Since we're going to have a dissenting vote, Podeska? Aye. Wilden?
Aye.
McComber?
Aye.
Barch?
Abstain.
Porter?
Aye.
Motion passes 4 and with 1 abstain.
I would like to say the quality of the minutes over the last year or whatever have been very, very good.
Okay.
You can acknowledge that we complimented you if you'd like. All right.
Kayla, make sure and insert some emojis or something in those minutes.
Yes. Or just a picture of Wilden? Okay, we have the code amendment for Title 1904 General Plan Land Use.
This amendment here contains several. Staff had gone through the last few months and noticed some things that were probably inconsistent. We also noticed just recently that it appears that with the approved general plan, 2 of the color designations appear to have been swapped. And so we want to make sure we get that taken care of as well, being the community commercial and the neighborhood commercial on the approved plan. Now, the city plan that we use every day on our GIS maps has those reversed back to what we thought they would be. And so basically what we're doing here tonight is just to do basically a massive cleanup, rearrange some general plan lines to follow property lines, general plans to match zones. In your staff report, there's several items listed by number. We could go through them individually if you want. I can open up a map that points out where those are at. With the Planning Commission, there's 2 major issues that they discussed. The first one here being what would be number 31 in your staff report, which is here on the top, is the existing general plan. Obviously, I don't think anybody anticipated or wanted Redwood Road and SR 73 to be office. It's developing now as retail. You got Wendy's, Taco Bell, you got Tractor Supply. Not a location for office, that should be regional commercial. So the city has proposed the general plan you see in the middle, and then the owner of the property had met with us, and they've proposed what you see here on the bottom. Basically, they would still keep some office. They would reduce that acreage. However, they would increase their regional commercial. They do want to keep some of the high-density housing, high-density residential, as you see in the dark brown. And just for the information purposes, the white box you see there on the bottom, there's less acreage of high-density residential. However, there could be, depending on what densities are located where, there could be up to 260 more units, however. That would be if the top map develops at the minimum density and the bottom develops at the maximum. You'd have actually 216 more units. But that's what the applicant would like to see on their property. The other issue that the Planning Commission discussed was the mixed waterfront. We had suggested bumping that mixed waterfront out to Redwood Road. They recommend keeping it as it is right now. And also on the map you see here, we did have the property owners. Again, this property here is not in the city, it's within the county, but the Pelican Point property. The owners of these properties that come out and talk to us, I think they had the assumption that we were annexing the property. We were not. This lot lie within the city's annexation map, and so we do place a land use designation on property that we foresee in the future of annexing into the city. I think once that was explained to them, I think they understood what was going on. You do have copies in your staff report of letters from the property owners down here outside in the county, and I just transcribe those word for word instead of give you the actual letter. But that's what you see there. But basically, it's basically a massive cleanup here of the general plan land use map.
Any questions? Yeah. Oh, yes. 19. Council of order. All right. I'm just going to go down the list because I put check marks by the ones I'm okay with and notes by the ones I'm not, or I have questions on. So, number 2, I would prefer the office warehouse. I think it's also consistent with the neighboring. In one, you're putting office warehouse at the back, and so I think it'd be consistent to just have office warehouse go down.
Let's go open it
rather
up here.
than putting industrial there. So
number 2.
Number 2, like you talk about changing it to. Okay, the one I'm looking at says changing it to industrial.
Okay, no, you didn't get the updated version then.
So apparently I don't have it, so never mind.
So regional commercial office warehouse.
Let's leave it the way you have it.
Okay.
I guess we'll see if anything else changes while I'm. Number 6, you talk about doing the townhome portion as high density residential. Usually don't we use medium density residential as townhomes?
The HDR starts at 9 units per acre.
And what is Sergeant Court?
I want to say I did calculate this up there just over 9, so it does fit the HDR.
Okay. I mean, it's not adding any houses that aren't already there, so. Let's see, 12, 14, you kind of did a big circle of the city, so I had to.
Yeah, kind of went counterclockwise and then threw a few curveballs in there too.
17, 18, 19,
Sorry, what happened to 21? Oh, there it is, okay. Okay, so with 21, down at the bottom, you're talking about changing that to low-density residential, which I don't necessarily have an issue with, except that you've got it stuck in between high-density residential, office warehouse, and a very dense planned community.
Yeah.
Like, putting an island of low density in the middle of all that would be counterproductive.
Yeah, and again, this is a property that's outside the city as well. Taguayo, we're anticipating Taguayo is probably going to change their development based on where the road alignment is going to come through.
Okay.
And it may actually not be floating out in the middle of nowhere, because Taguayo may have low-density residential up against it, you don't know.
That's true.
But having had several experiences before of making mistakes, I'd much rather annex in at low density or even very low density and then go up from there, because the instant you annex in at low density, you end up with at least 4 or 5 units to the acre, since that's the max of our low density.
That was mainly just a planning question, because of like, why are we, it doesn't match anything around it, but I'm.
Again, it's not a zone, but it's almost a holding zone, like Commissioner Barch is talking about. Let's do something low, and then, hey, if something viable comes on, then we'll anticipate or entertain a change.
And then the next ones are 24 and 26. These kind of both go together. You're changing both of those to neighborhood commercial.
And that's one of the errors in the mapping, was that, see, right now, the purple you see here on our city GIS maps, the purple is listed as neighborhood commercial.
Okay.
On the approved general plan, which the council approved in July of last year, that was reversed with community commercial. The case in point is, you look at the property here, where that was where the Holiday Oil wanted to go on Harbor. That was denied 2 months before you adopted the general plan. It was denied to go to regional commercial. So the intent was never to have anything but neighborhood commercial there.
Okay.
And so
I guess so. I get that the colors were wrong and everything, and we're wanting to align it with the road. My question is these are going to be interchanges on a major regional transportation facility. So I'm wondering why.
Well, and
because up north, you're switching them. I'm looking at. Sorry, let me just finish my thought. On 37 and 38, we're going the opposite way, but all 4 properties seem to be in the same situation of they're on a major transportation. These ones are on Redwood, and on a major transportation corridor. These are going to be interchanges. Why would we not?
Right, I think the difference is, one, this is still long-term down here in this end of town, when that road's actually going to go in. And it could be the case in point, too, of going something in a smaller zone than of something at a community. And plus, you're going to have probably mostly residences down here as well. Do you want to bring in major commercial nodes here? Or do you want to?
Well, I mean, community commercial is not meant to be a major commercial node either. It's kind of that in between. It's not a little shop in the neighborhood, but it's also not a big box.
I think it's more we're looking at it that, hey, if we can go regional at that time, it's ready to go. Great, let's entertain that at that time.
Okay. That's
on that point, though. I mean, that will also be part of an annexation at some point. That particular node, and so I know the applicant is kind of working on something. So you may see this in the not too distant future, and we'll be able to see kind of what they're asking for as part of their annexation request as well.
Thank you. I guess the next one is on 32 Mount Saratoga, and this seemed to go across all of everything that wasn't LDS church property. We're changing all of the planned community residential to planned community mixed use. Yeah, a little bit. I had this specific concern or question when, I guess the question's more correct, when Mount Saratoga came in, I was like, well, I would like to see a little bit more commercial out there, and there's going to be commercial up along SR 73, but that's owned by somebody else, so there's not actually any commercial in Mount Saratoga. So are we just trying to get rid of mixed? Are we just trying to get rid of it, or because we're basically getting rid of anything that says mixed planned community residential. There will be none of it on the map after this change.
So my theory on this, and this is one of the things that I want brought up too, is honestly, planned community is mixed. You have the possibility of residential, you have the possibility of commercial, you have the possibility of office, you have all these possibilities. There's no reason to call it anything other than planned community.
Yeah, and right now, the general plan does have planned community residential and planned community mixed use.
That came in my personal opinion, as a mistake on this last section, and
there's
we need to
gonna-
go back.
Yeah, there's going to be some other things that we're going to have to clean up too, because there are land use designations in the general plan that are not listed in Title 19. There's general plan designations in Title 19 that are not listed in the general plans. There's still additional
Yeah.
cleanups that need to
But I
take
think this
place
is a
here.
cleanup we can do right now and fix it and just say all planned community is just planned
Yeah.
community.
And that would, I was just like, why are we anyway. 32, 33, 34, 35. Okay, well, I'll get to that in a second. I think that was 37. How many are there total?
40-some.
I'm up to 38, 39. Where's the list?
Yeah, there's 37 through 42 are the cleanup ones where the colors.
All right, then I guess the other questions I had were on, these are more like not changes you're making, but just, I was looking at the proposed map and looking at it, there was some things that didn't make sense to me. One, the Springs is part of a planned community now. It's been acquired by Wildflower, and
It has been, it's going through the process, but they've actually never amended their community plan and village plan to take up the Springs.
okay, I think he left. Okay. But I mean, this isn't necessary, he's amended it, but we know what's coming, so why wouldn't we just make it planned community now instead of leaving it the way it is?
Or even better, it's a land use plan, what do we really want there?
There you go, that also works. I don't know, that was one question. The other one was the transit TOD overlay. The southern fork doesn't actually follow the alignment of Pony Express where we would want. So that just needs to, I think it just needs to be fixed.
So let me just zoom in here and see what, so this is the approved general plan map you see here.
Yeah, this is stuff that's already on there. I think it just needs to be fixed. I think it's just, when we changed the alignment of Pony Express a little bit and the TOD overlay didn't get fixed to accommodate that. Okay. Mine actually shows the future Pony Express on there, and they're not, they don't overlap, so it seemed weird.
So just to modify the TOD along Pony?
Just to go along Pony.
Okay.
And then the southern one is this commercial floating thing. It also kind of doesn't really follow the, yeah, I mean, it does, again, my map has the proposed Mountain View corridor. And it covers most of it, but at the south it doesn't quite cover it, and at the north it doesn't quite cover it, so just kind of fix that so that it covers the actual corridor. Because I think, in my mind, the floating commercial corridor, or commercial floating overlay, is there because of Mountain View corridor. And so it should be centered around Mountain View corridor. Yeah, or just tilt it a little bit or whatever. Anyway.
Because it's like shooting at the elementary.
Exactly. It goes over the elementary school. I don't necessarily think we want commercial right next door, so. Anyway, that's my input. That didn't take too long.
So you covered a ton, which is good, so hopefully we'll be able to go faster and faster each one. I'll take a little of a reprieve, and then Shelley, I'm sure, has some things to share. A couple things that I wanted to point out. The transportation overlay, I personally do not want us putting the one coming off Pioneer Crossing as the big transportation where the light rail and things coming through. I want for Saratoga Springs, whatever MAG wants to say, we can argue MAG, we can work through MAG, we can get it there. But once we put it on our map, it sort of says like, oh yeah, we're okay with that. We're preserving that. We're looking at that. Pony Express is the transportation corridor. So that one you have there,
Until,
the north one.
and then up to Redwood Road.
And up to Redwood Road.
Because it goes to Pioneer, through the main.
Yeah, it hits Pioneer Crossing eventually, but I personally, you agree? I just think that we're sending the wrong message, that we're looking at that as being where I want the primary focus to be Pony Express. For me, I appreciate you're talking about the colors. That really just threw me big time. And so we're the purple and stuff. I also want to make sure that even though we're getting rid of the mixed use, I think is orange, we have mixed use in our city that has already been developed and or currently being developed or have vested rights. We can't just change that now. It's sort of to your point, like if we know it's going to be a planned community, why don't we just put the color of planned community even though it hasn't maybe officially been presented, because we know that that's what's going to happen. I just think that because you have neighborhood commercial as orange, but that used to be the mixed use before, and we still do have that in the city because developments came in under that. So I think it just creates some confusion. I know we're running out of colors. I almost think personally that your neighborhood commercial and community commercial can be two shades of purple, because they're really very similar. There's not a ton of differences there. And for a land use map, I think it works. Just have two different shades of purple.
Well, one thing you can do too is you can take that mixed use and you can say, well, that's the mixed use zone, because right now, this is the general plan map you see here. We don't have a mixed use on the general plan. One thing you can do is you can say, well, the mixed use zone would be appropriate in one of these designations as well. We can look at the Title 19 to change that, but we can still keep that mixed use option that way.
I mean, I'm perplexed on that because the mixed use is not my favorite zone, and we've been moving away from that for a reason. We just created a whole new zone for a developer so that we wouldn't have to do a mixed use. I just think that there's some land use that's still raw dirt, especially over by Harvest Hills, that is mixed use, and should still, you know what I mean, and still show it as that. And I think that you were running out of colors, and so it got hijacked, the orange. And so that's why I was saying if you did the two shades of purple, it almost is more transparent because they're really similar, and then you can know that purple is because purple sort of descends from red. I'm not an artist, but red being the regional commercial, coming into the purple, like maybe a darker purple for the community commercial, which is a higher, and then a lighter purple for neighborhood commercial. And so then we're dealing in those red schemes to show that it's all commercial.
Yeah, one thing, again, the general plan is the guide, obviously, but the zones, the mixed-use zones are still there, and those aren't going to change, so that if there are places that are zone mixed-use, they still have that option to do that.
Yep. And I get that. It's just the consistency between the different maps. And so as you're working with the cleaning up of this, if we can just make sure that there is that consistency, and because because I don't want the land use map to be a zoning map, because that's not the purpose of it. But at the same time, where we know that there are already allowed uses, we should just accept it. Though Shelley did say, but we should put what we want there. But we know that that's not the case, right? So that's sort of really just my observation, the transportation one, and then just that color scheme, if the consistency there, and then Chris caught on the commercial down in the south. That I thought that was pretty funny. So thanks.
Did you want to address this item? I don't know if Porter did.
Oh, I don't want to name the person who owns the land, but the property west of Wendy's and Taco Bell. So, yeah, maybe we'll come back, Chris, real quick. I'll just go and then before we move on. I personally, I like the city proposal the most. I get that things changed. We had some alignments change and roads dead ending and different things in that region. I think that it's cleaner, the city proposal. I don't like the up to 216 more units. That scares me.
Yeah, and that would be if the one that develops the lowest density possible versus the highest. That's where you get the spread, the difference.
Yep.
Most likely they would still maximize their density, so you probably wouldn't have that big of a difference, but it could happen.
If I can add, the developer and property owner during the planning commission meeting had said that 10.5 acres up in the corner, that they're fine as well if that's also designated office instead of that high density residential. It's the Crossroads Boulevard, how it now divides the property. They said for them it makes more sense to have that regional commercial on the outskirts, which can also go office, and then have the office kind of within that region. So that was kind of the thought process behind that.
Yeah, because I mean, the office can be back and behind, right? That actually does pretty well. Is that what you're getting at?
Say that again.
The office, because you have the
kinda-
regional.
You know how the old road used to go straight through?
Mhm.
I mean, that could potentially make sense for office, going where that 10.5 is in that
Mhm.
northwest corner. So, you know, they're basically, and they're here if you have any questions, but they just want to work with what makes sense with the projects that they're working on, the discussions that they're currently having with developers, based on the land use and the zoning as it is now. And so they're just asking for some retention of what's there, so.
If it's okay with the council, I'd like the landowner to be able to talk. I had a chance to talk with him when we were down at the retailer conference with Owen and David,
yeah.
ICSC. If you'd like to come up to the mic.
You can sit. It's
Which mic would
Yeah,
you like tonight?
the sit-down one. It's a little hotter seat.
My name is Richard Mendenhall.
There you go.
Now I'm live?
You're live.
Okay. Richard Mendenhall with WPI Enterprises. We are partnering with the Horn family on the Saratoga Turf Farm properties, right? Utah Valley Turf Farm is what it's called. And there's a couple of things happening that we want to make sure that you're just aware of in a general sense. You know, the reason we're asserting ourselves on the general plan is we have some major users who are prepared to come to Saratoga City or give it serious consideration and review. And what they're looking for is the vision of how this is going to roll out in the community. One of the things that we struggle with is if we work with major retailers and they say, okay, this is the end of the community and there's nothing but alfalfa fields here. The current zoning is commercial and agricultural, okay? And we're explaining to them that this is all in motion, things are happening, this is a very dynamic community, and this isn't intended to be undetermined by remaining agricultural zone. So the general plan puts the foundation in place that we can then come back in and present to the Planning Commission, the City Council, a uniform commercial development for the entire 120 acres. Our goal is to create the most synergistic uses that complement each other the best, that create the most sense of community based on what the vision is for the city as it goes forward. And what we're seeing in the bottom plan was an attempt to try to maintain housing as it indicates on that schedule. There's 8.24 acres, approximately less residential in that plan than there was previously in the plan. And the idea is that the retailers find that their sales are enhanced by residents in proximity to the point of consumption, not necessarily office. Office doesn't transfer to retail consumption in the same way the approximation of residential does. And so when we run our models on revenues that can be generated from this that then lead us to tax base for the city, you have somewhere approaching $1 million incremental differences between the top plan, the second plan, and the third plan, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million of tax base that you would see in the future. And what we're seeing in the retail world today is a vanishing number of retailers in the 5,000 to 30,000 square foot range. A lot of that's being corrupted in terms of brick and mortar stores by internet sales. What we are seeing is an increase in the amount of quasi-office or service providers that want street front exposure, good access, and a high degree of visibility to the community. So we're seeing more medical type services. Any of the business uses that have a service element to them are doing more to lease these kind of street front buildings than they are going into traditional office space where you might have dentists on a third floor. They want to be right where people can see them and get to them, and they promote those businesses through advertising, access, exposure, more like retail businesses today, right? All through the various service industries. And so that's why it's important to have Crossroad Boulevards have the commercial frontages coming down. The Planning Commission had expressed some concern about wanting to not overemphasize, is I guess how I'd characterize it, the residential elements. Dave is right that we like the high density because it's volume of consumers in walkable distances and close proximity to the consumptions of goods and services. We think that makes the most synergistic plan. And so that's why we proposed this. Planning Commission did recommend that the 10.5 acres at the northwest corner of the property be office, which, this is not all going to happen in 1 year. It'll happen over a series of years, and I'm sure there will be more than one change between now and the end of this project. But
The bottom plan gives us the best platform to encourage major retailers to come here and is the most consistent with what they're looking for when they go back to their real estate committees and try to make commitments to come to Saratoga now versus potentially later, or to adjacent communities, if that makes sense. So we'd encourage consideration of that. We would accept alternatives or recommendations that would modify that, but we think that we're in a position where we'll be prepared to bring tenants to the market. We know that some have come in the last week or so and visited with Dave. There's 2 or 3 more that we expect to be in that would be in the major tenant category before the end of July. And what we're hoping to do is have a platform in place that's encouraging to take this seriously, that the city's prepared to accept zoning applications based on general plan amendments that will enable them to have the environment that they need to have the continuity, the co-tenancy, and the synergy of uses that will allow them to get their approvals to come to Saratoga City.
So, Mayor, if I could, I just want to quantify something for you so you can visualize it. The Aldera complex that's just to our east is about 11 acres. And so as you look at the request for the high-density residential, I just wanted to quantify that for you so that you had kind of that vision of what kind of footprint you're looking for or looking at.
So I personally, I mean, since I'm almost finished and then I can just be done, I understand the arguments that you're giving. The residents made it very clear about high-density housing. I have a very strong platform about not approving. I know I'm not approving a zone here, but you're sort of indicating at this general use map that I would. I'm okay with that regional commercial band at the top, how it sort of cuts across where the white is. Technically, that's all red, if I'm not mistaken, correct? So then the red comes down and around. So basically, the red stays up front of all the roads. That makes sense. I think that we're getting a little bit ahead of the horse here, right? The cart is, because the city's proposal makes sense from a city's perspective, but not from a developer's perspective. And so I get that you've got a lot of things happening, and so I'm okay with the regional commercial band there. I appreciate that you would look at potentially office space on that 10.5, so you're not looking at having both the 12.9 and the 10.5. I personally won't approve the land use map if it's saying that we're increasing high-density housing, or we would be willing to be approving high-density housing. I get that they want this model with they like having, like the district, I guess, has the apartments behind it and stuff, and I understand that. We have a lot of other areas in the city. We have land right abutting to this that has the rights to do that, and they can actually come in and put, and I could not stop them from doing that, and they got that vested right years ago before I was on the council. And so south of there, the church property has vested rights to have multifamily housing that was given to them prior to Jim and I think we're the senior people here, when we were on the council, when you were a council member at the time. So I personally wouldn't be able to, but I'm okay if we did the regional commercial, and I look to staff and my peers here on how we might be able to get a 5-0 vote here, but I won't be able to if we're indicating that we're going to be increasing or looking to increase high-density housing.
Can I ask a question? Because if, as he suggested, if the 10.5 went to office warehouse, it would actually be a net reduction of high-density housing. Would that be something you could support? Because you'd only have 12.9, where up above you have 14.95.
Yeah.
So it would be a decrease.
This would be a really good place for some mixed
So
use.
I would be okay because it's a reduction, because I'm not adding any high-density housing, so at that point I'd be okay.
Yeah, if you actually look out, I've actually took out the road here for the HDR. Actually, so this is the current general plan right now at 14.95. If you take out the right-of-way, they actually have 11.67 that's usable as far as the high density goes.
So if we could get the 12.9 to 11.6, and that would actually make it very similar to Aldera, being 11 something you said. Again, I'm not increasing the potential right, the ability to file suit or whatever.
But with the reduction of the current plan of 16.69 in medium density. So we're dropping the medium density out entirely. So we just have one type of housing there. We felt that the
medium density is not.
Well, in the existing general plan, at the top map.
Homes.
Townhomes.
You have the tan for 16.69, and as
I can be persuaded. I mean, as long as they're not increasing the amount of density, and it looks like it would be a net decrease.
And I appreciate your point on that. I guess another thing I think is important to consider is, we're looking at this little rectangle, but just off screen, you have the Mountain View Corridor Spaghetti Bowl is what's going to be there. So, as we're looking at this, like, you got to be careful.
That's why the office makes sense.
Right.
And it does. And that's why we had the 14.85 as high-density housing, because we knew that this was a huge transportation corridor. So, and again, removing that 16.69, so it's a net decrease, and so I can be persuaded now.
Okay. But I would say I am supportive of the landowner proposal if we change that 10.5 to the office, warehouse, or office, or whatever it does, the sky blue color. I think that maximizing that frontage as regional commercial is what's going to be a long-term benefit to the city. So, yeah. So that's why I'm supportive of that over maybe the city proposed plan. I do accept that it's cleaner and stuff, but I just think we want to maximize that frontage for the highest best use, and that would be regional commercial. So if we can change the 10.5 to the blue, then I would support the bottom plan.
And if I might just add, I mentioned it before, but regional commercial office can still go in regional commercial. So it actually gives us a lot more flexibility, or the property owner, based on what he needs.
The office isn't great.
You're okay with that request, right? I am okay. That was the planning commission's recommendation. And when your comment was, what was it? I'm not okay with that.
Increasing density, and that's why the discussion brings it down, so I feel good.
Yeah. The idea, though, is what we're representing to you. We find ourselves as engineers in the middle of this. We go out and we have to anticipate what a Walmart requirement is, and then lay that foundation, and then get them to come to market and see if it meets their criteria. And if it does, we start doing business, right? So there's some speculation involved. And what we're presenting to you is the platform that we believe, having done business with the type of tenants who are 100,000, 80,000 square feet to 150,000 square feet, having just done deals with them in Utah in the last couple of years, this is the platform that they're all talking about. If this is in place, that's encourage them to continue the pursuit of this location, right? Great. They like the commercial frontages, they like residential in proximity, but not 1 acre lots. They want higher density walkability, these kind of things. That represents volume. That's consumer dollars landing in their stores and not going through internet sales, right? And the merchandise walks out of the store. The office is complementary, but people don't consume to and from office like they do to and from home, right? So your residents drive from working in Salt Lake and consume near home because they don't want the ice cream to melt before they get home. They don't want the vegetables to wilt, those kind of things, right? And so that proximity is a big issue to these players. And it also is a real benefit to the healthcare providers that are building to the south. This is a residential platform that supports walkability for employees that we know will be...
That was going to be my next thing. We're working with David to make sure that we have high-density housing and different things that are coming near this as well, that you can leverage. It's not your property, but you can still leverage those numbers.
We're doing a 250-acre project in Spanish Fork. IHC has 65 acres in it, and they're starting the hospital there. And, we go through the employee counts, and it's very interesting that I have people like TJ Maxx tell me analytical stories about how they never gave credit to hospital proximity for retail sales. But then they said they've opened stores in Dallas where they had a TJ Maxx and a Marshalls essentially across the street from the hospital. Zero credit for out-of-market sales as a result of the hospital. They have a 30% boost in store sales as a result of proximity to the hospital because people are waiting, patients are asleep, they're having...
Bring a gift to their,
They're in an operation, they've got a half hour to kill, they walk across the street and they engage in commerce. And so these are all really positive synergistic uses from the perspective of the major retailers.
Great, thank you.
Great. Okay. Wilden?
I'm comfortable with the landowner proposal, switching the 10.5 to office, and it sounds like that's still a really good platform, so I'm comfortable with that. For staff, I didn't quite understand, well, I did understand, but can you point to me on the mixed waterfront section that the planning commission had exception with.
Yeah, just down here at the, we had suggested mixed waterfront would obviously bring in a commercial element to it. But out front, we'd have low-density residential. Do you want to be bringing commercial traffic through the residential zones into the mixed waterfront? That was our thought of then extending the mixed waterfront out to Redwood. Planning Commission said no, they want to keep the mixed waterfront as it's shown right now, as it's approved right now.
And if I remember, we talked about it.
Proposed map shows it going to Redwood.
Right, but their recommendation is not to do that.
Pull it back, yeah. And we talked about that because we were concerned that with our mixed waterfront, we were only getting housing against the lake, and we wanted to make sure we had the opportunities to have some commercial against the lake. And so when we originally talked about it, we'd split it like that so that we could push that commercial towards the lake and encourage that economic development, that kind of economic development up against the lake, if I remember correctly.
So far out on that.
And
It's like a wish list for the next 15 years, so I'm fine with the planning commission.
one thing I did point out to the Planning Commission, which they did not recommend, was just the fact that this property you see right here currently is applied for 1 acre lots. So if they go forth with those 1 acre lots, does it make sense to keep that mixed waterfront on that property, and then do we keep this then isolated pocket right here? I proposed that to the Planning Commission to remove that. They decided not to, so I just throw that out for your thought as well.
Well, the only thing is, though, is if they come in and want to change, this is the one that we fought for to keep as the 1 acre lots, and they wanted to change it away from that.
Yeah, they wanted to go to.
So we may want to actually keep it as a low-density residential or a very low-density residential in order to maintain that, because that's one of the few places we actually have acre lots right now, and they had wanted to change that. So my fear is that if we do change it, if we do put that mixed waterfront across it, we still have the waterfront overlay no matter what, right? But they will come in and say, see, we can do higher densities and we can do all that, when that's one of the areas we actually had 1 acre lots.
And this is out at the...
This is just south of Harbor Bay and Pelican Point.
Yeah.
Pelican Bay, Marine.
Again, we're so far out, I'm fine with leaving it low-density residential, and 10 years later, when they come in, we can take a look at it.
And I think I'm okay with leaving the one above it that way too, just for consistency's sake until we figure that out. Yeah.
You know, and to that argument, we've recently had people come in and request zone changes because it aligns with the general plan, and we've specifically said that
was a mistake.
That's why we're supportive. No, we didn't say it was a mistake. We said that's why we're supportive of it. So I'm fine leaving low.
I think we need to do it the very low density residential, right, in order to, because the rural residential zoning only falls under the very low, and that's what we've got right now, and they can't have that option, I don't think, under the low density.
I'd have to look it up.
So you're saying from the southern border of the interested property
up to the existing development.
So to this border right here, everything.
Everything south of there is mixed waterfront.
Leave it as it is for the south of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I mean,
sensitive.
I think especially far out, it's nice to have a strategic view, and there's plenty of time before anything will memorialize and how the market.
Yeah.
To what you said, we would just match the land use with the underlying zone, what you're saying.
At least follows to per.
I don't know if
Because right now you've got mixed waterfront on the R110 zone here as well.
Right, but on that R110, I wouldn't mind even making that the very low-density residential, just so it has the option of doing that. They can always come back in. But right now, they're zoned.
They've got the 10 right now, guaranteed, 10 acre, or 10,000 square foot.
They're not zoned that way.
Right. No, the zoning they are R110 right now. That's the zone.
They are already, okay, so then do that one low density, and then the very low density below it.
And they always can come in and ask for something different, and they always will, so that's not an if. Was there any other specific items that I need to address?
What is your thought on the next T overlay?
Yeah. I'm supportive of the prior two comments behind that. You both were in agreement, right? Okay, I didn't want to say.
Councilwoman Barch?
Thank you. Okay, so just a little bit of confusion, and maybe you can help me understand this, Dave. So this is a land use map, so this is kind of what we want the city, how we eventually want the city to develop.
Correct.
And that's, from what I thought I understood, that would include areas where they're zoned one way and maybe they're being used one way, but we don't really want them that way in the future.
And this was brought up in the Planning Commission in the case with some apartments. One planning commissioner suggested, well, those could go office in the future. Is that really going to happen? Something like that, I think you'd use the same thought as used earlier, say, well, if that's the case, let them approach us, 50 years down the road.
So where I'm looking at, for example, is I'm going to specifically use the Springs.
Okay.
So, for example, we've been talking with Camp Williams about the fact they need that overlay, that buffer, the military overlay across there, and that we're wanting to do, we would love to avoid housing units right up against their firing area, things like that. So in this scenario, yeah, they may have a certain thing that they're actually granted, but in our land use plan, especially up against this military area, I really see that that's an area we need to say, hey, this is a sensitive area. Ideally, on our land use map, this would be open space. So those are the kinds of things that I would like to see. In fact, in part of that area, if I'm not mistaken, they actually can't service it with water. So they would need to actually have that be natural open space?
They can find ways to try and service it. I mean,
Okay.
engineering-wise, there's solutions that are out there. We just haven't accepted those concepts.
Okay.
Remember too, you always have to think about the referendum power.
Right.
So if you designate it something that's inconsistent with the development agreement, and then we have to come back later and do a general plan amendment, that's then subject to referendum. Citizens can refer that, and that can create all sorts of problems, as we've learned in the past, when our zoning and general plan are not consistent with development agreements. So it's kind of important to put that in stone and have all the zoning.
What about having, for example, our power line corridors have to remain open space? So is that something that we can put in there on those power line corridors, that can just, will be open space on our general plan, because it will be?
I'd have to defer that to Kevin if that legally we can do that.
Sure, yeah, and I don't see why not. I mean, there's an existing easement in place right now, and so I don't see how that would come into conflict with anyone's property rights. Rocky Mountain Power is not going to allow any development other than that.
Okay, so I guess for me, for sure, I'd like to add along the power line corridors, those that are those big massive power line transmission lines, that become open space. And whether you designate it as natural or developed, I mean, I'm sure that's mostly going to be natural, and that we're not going to, for the most part, develop. There are going to be some areas that are, but if we leave it as natural and they want to come in and further develop in certain developments that we're working on, then I think that's fine. And I think that the Springs specifically, I don't want to take away their rights, but ideally we have that buffer between especially in the firing area, and maybe I can ask Councilman Porter this since he's been working on this, but with the overlay, the military overlay, has that been set aside yet?
What do you mean?
As far as where it needs to be? I mean, I know we have our overlays that we've done as far as like our noise overlay and our lighting overlay and those kinds of things, and our military overlay in general. But they've been doing the landscape, whatever it is.
Right. I mean, if Camp Williams had their druthers and it was affordable, they would buy this whole property.
Right.
But I don't know that they've figured out, they're basically just trying to maximize the amount of buffer they have. I think they're looking at somewhere in the realm of 200 feet, 250 feet minimum.
Okay. So anyways, I don't know what the rest of the council wants to do or what Kevin thinks about that particular area. I'd love to see that on there, just so we say, this is our ideal, and then maybe we, within his development, are kind of working around that area. I don't know how to do that. I'd like to see that preserved. So, okay.
Yeah, so just on that too, you got to make sure that, remember, the development agreement was a legislative decision that was made previously.
Right. And
now there's a vested right, of course, that expires in 10 years. but you do need to kind of make sure your same legislative policy decisions are consistent with each other, because it, like I said, it can create problems in the future with the referendum power.
Okay, so I'll move on from there. So the area of Harvest Village along Harvest Hills Boulevard you have is orange, which we've always known as mixed use, which it's part of a mixed use development. It's the residential portion of the mixed use. You now have it as orange, which is now, what, community commercial, something like that? So it's residential, but more than that, I'm concerned that we're taking off that mixed use designation. So along Harvest Hills Boulevard, this is one of the areas, there are a couple other areas like this. So along Harvest Hills Boulevard, from the stoplight, this is all on the north side, that very first parcel is actually open space. That's our detention basin, it's our monument, it will never be anything but open space. It's actually part of Harvest Hills open space requirements, so that needs to be green.
This one right here?
Nope, up,
That one?
right there.
We're not proposing to change that one.
It's commercial. It's not commercial. It never will be, never has been. It's part of the open space. The four that go around Hillcrest Road that are regional commercial, they're right where the Taekwondo studio, the engineering building, and the lighthouse, and then the empty lot, those four cannot be regional commercial. They were part of the mixed-use development that included Harvest Village. In addition, if you put regional commercial on there or community commercial on there, they can bring tire stores in, et cetera, and that was one of the things the residents absolutely positively did not want. So that has to be neighborhood commercial if you're going to leave it commercial. But this is one of those things where it was mixed use. It was supposed to be mixed use.
Yeah, it's zoned right now regional commercial. Well, these ones up here are.
Those are.
These ones down there.
It was never down there. It was always mixed use. So that needs to be fixed. Yeah. So if you're going to separate and do residential and commercial, you need to make sure that that's neighborhood commercial. Personally, I think we should keep things as they were, but that's, staff seems to be fighting it ridiculously a lot on that.
My argument on that is why? Because when you take... You're going from mixed use to neighborhood commercial, you're actually taking, because it's making it so that they can't put residential.
Well, that commercial area was the commercial area for the
so it should
residential.
stay mixed use.
So it should stay mixed use, but that's,
Yeah.
yeah. Likewise, if you go south of Harvest Hills Boulevard, right there in that same area, those lots there, that was all, the inside of that originally was regional commercial, and that's why we had the tire store there originally. And when that went defunct and was empty for so very, very long, we were finally able to change that whole entire thing to mixed use, which is how we got the townhomes back behind and then got them to change those to offices and small businesses that are working well in there. So again, that can't be regional commercial. And it can't be community commercial because, again, the whole point was to get rid of the auto-related uses at the entry to Harvest Hills. So, which they were told would not ever happen again.
So you're referring to these three
Those all right there, yeah.
parcels in here?
Can't be community commercial. They can be neighborhood commercial if you're going to split it up again. If you're going to leave it mixed use, fantastic. But it has to be the neighborhood, can't be community commercial. And if the car wash at that point becomes a grandfather pre-existing use, then so be it. I don't know what to do with that. All I know is that it was changed to mixed use.
Yeah, and again, this only changed, so once combined in the future and do something, obviously they're granted whatever they've got now with the current zone.
But what I don't want them to do is take that building and retrofit it back to a tire store, which I don't think they would because they seem to be doing pretty well now, which is great. So that's that one. Likewise with the at Aspen Hills Boulevard, north of Aspen Hills Boulevard, where the ABC daycare is going in, you've got it as community commercial, and again, I don't think that's supposed to be community commercial. It's supposed to be, well, they started talking about offices and the retail, and they actually originally had housing above it, and we changed that. So it was mixed use, and you've got it again as community commercial, which then again allows for all of those auto-oriented businesses at the entrance, which is what we're trying to avoid in those very residential neighborhoods. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Then if you go just slightly to your west, number 35, is that the Central Utah Water Pond, is that why we're changing it to
Yes.
ICC? Okay.
Yeah, utility pond.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because it's not visible on the map, and so I wasn't quite sure where that was going to be. So we already talked about the whole PC thing, changing all just to PC, no differentiation between them. Number 3, oh, I talked about that one already. Okay, likewise, Sergeant Court. Number 6, so you've got those areas all changed to community, you want to change them to community commercial, and again, those are all supposed to be neighborhood commercial type uses. And on, oh, sorry, that was 38, so, no, that wasn't. 6 is Sergeant Court, yes, so Sergeant Court, changing to the medium density is fine, and then you've got it changed to office. I don't know if are we going to leave that front portion office?
Yeah, right, because there's the, I'm not sure what business is in there, but
Yeah.
it's a commercial business, but that stays office.
So, and again, technically, that was all mixed use originally, where it was office and residential. So, or retail, office, and residential. So number 8 is a question. A lot of that, if I'm not mistaken on number 8, is actually sensitive lands that can't be developed, because it's actually in...
It's in Lehigh.
It's in the floodplain.
Yeah,
Well,
it's in Lehigh too.
right, but that's one that we are working on.
In our map, yeah.
So I just wondered if we need to make sure that we get the sensitive land marked as sensitive land along the river, in that drainage area.
No.
Okay. But I just, like, I know that very south
And here we don't
tip
either.
that's kind of pointing west.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a ginormous marsh in there.
That whole area is wetland.
Most of it, yeah, most of it.
And in theory, yeah, it could be built on, it'd take a lot of work.
A whole lot of work. Okay. TOD on the overlay on Pioneer being removed. So going to 31 to Mr. Mendenhall's piece, I appreciate working with you and trying to figure out how to make that best work. My hesitation on going all the way to number 3 is also in that I'm used to office wanting larger land spaces, and 12 acres didn't seem like enough to make a large office complex like I tend to see. And so I would prefer to see also the 10 acres across going to office. I think it would make it function better as they can work back and forth together across the area. Yeah.
So that they're willing to do the 10.
Right, so I think that, so I'm okay with number 3 with the landowner's proposal with the change to the office. I think that that's a good compromise. And later on, when we actually get to develop that area, if something changes, then you can always come back and ask a future council if that would, for a zoning change and for change there. But I think that'd be great. Or if it's, yeah, go fast. But I would love to see us help you be successful in that area. So I understand the need for the housing in that area. Let's see, I'm trying to go north to south, and it's kind of messed up a little bit. Number 13. Oh, on the parcel, why are we showing it all as, sorry, on the North Shore parcel, why are we showing it all as medium density instead of showing it as the mixed residential, or whatever we call it? Is that because we don't have a land use for that yet?
Yes.
Okay. Is that something
So
that
we figure
we
medium.
need to adjust?
Yeah, we could figure medium density is the closest to what they're doing there.
Okay. Is there a reason that along our transit area, we're not actually saying, hey, here we actually want higher densities? So we encourage businesses that are looking at that area to say, hey, we're going to have, I mean, that's kind of what it is, right?
Yeah, the TOD overlay would.
The TOD overlay maybe tells them that.
That's what I would think.
Do we have anything in our TOD overlay written in there to help them say, these are areas we actually want to concentrate the density?
Should be in the general, I might have to go look at it,
Okay,
but
so
the
we can
reason
just-
why that's there is to encourage,
Right.
the higher densities to utilize
So
the
if we have
the
some kind
future
of
transit
verbiage in
line
the TOD, then that might.
in the general plan.
Yeah, so this is kind of your starting point, and then we want to encourage that kind of growth. Okay. The area, is there a reason that we're not showing the North Marina yet on there as open space?
Right now is we got as a mixed waterfront. There's been talk of there could be some commercial type uses there.
Okay.
And so we figured that, again, maybe at that time, we'd look at it again and say,
Okay.
mixed waterfront's not appropriate now, let's go to something else.
Fair enough. Okay, and then, 17. Sorry, I put the numbers down and then wasn't paying attention to where they were. 17, you've got RC to NC to match the existing zone. Isn't one of those actually ICRC, because isn't one of those a church?
Yeah, and zone neighborhood commercial.
Is zone neighborhood commercial? In other areas
And
where we
I
have
don't know the
churches-
reason why, but that's
Right.
what the zone is now.
Okay, so for in other areas that we're zoned residential, but yet we still put the ICRC color across it.
On churches?
On churches and,
And that's why, so some churches are, some are not. It's not consistent, where all churches are IC.
so is that something that we can just change across the board, that if it's a church or a school, we automatically make it the ICRC? Because we don't really have a zone for a school either. It's in a residential area, and it's a residential zone, and yet we put the blue across it.
So you want to change all churches right now
I think
to IC?
schools and churches should just be listed as ICRC.
Can we do that, Kevin, if it's
ICR.
not proposed in the,
It's just
I/G, whatever that's called.
could all churches and all schools in the city just right now by their vote tonight be changed to IC?
It's on the land use, so we're not actually taking zoning away.
I'm not sure what the implications would be to the neighboring properties, which would have received some sort of notice if the land use map was being changed adjacent to their property. There may be some concerns with that.
But this,
Just with the noticing, they didn't get any notice of this happening, and then we went and changed it. They didn't have a chance to come and speak to that.
Why didn't we notice the whole city?
why didn't you notice the whole city? I'm just curious.
I believe we sent some notice within the 300-foot rule. What the code says is, if there's a specific rezone or someone could be impacted by the rezone, the land use amendment, or the land use map amendment, they have to be noticed within 300 feet. It's a proximity rule as well as being directly or adversely or impacted somehow by the change.
We could bring that back, get all these properties identified, then bring it back and put them
So
as IC.
then, for example, where you've incorrectly marked, for example, Harvest Village, or those, are you telling me we can't change that and fix those mistakes tonight either?
So one thing.
Because they weren't marked on there?
Because they weren't, so this is
Be an issue. I'm addressing an issue. You wouldn't necessarily be prohibited from doing that, but it could be an issue in the future.
So I think that we have so many fundamental changes. You can still keep going, Shelley, I'm not
Yeah.
stopping you.
I've only got one
But I
more.
want to have a quick conversation. I think that we need to table this except for this development section. So when we are getting ready for the motion, I'm going to ask, if Jim's here, then Jim can, but for a motion to table this until we can get some of this stuff cleaned up.
Excepting number 31.
But accepting 31 with that 10 acres, so that when you walk away, you now have a land use map that you can use, David, you can use for this, because it's time sensitive. But then all the others, because there's just been way too much.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way my mind can comprehend them, and I can't even think of the rule of action items. I mean, it's immense. Plus, then we're also dealing with the notification. We can do what we need to do. I'm wondering if we just notify the whole city, and if we do something like that, and just say, this is what's happening. Feel free to get engaged in this process, because people always complain about all this stuff that's going on, and they never get engaged in the fundamental basis of what defines a city is right here. So I think that that'll be important. So I just wanted you to know that, so in case you need to leave, it's fine, but we will be approving that section. The 31 will be approved, and David, you can reach out to him and verify that if you do need to leave. With that, shall I continue?
Yeah. So then the last one I had is just confusion on specifically that very south where it goes from the high density to the regional commercial and all that, because it's shown two different ways on this map versus the other map where it's the proposed.
You're talking about this property in here?
Yeah, so what is currently being mined, what is not, what is, and I realize it's outside of the city boundaries at this point, but it's within an annexation boundary, exactly.
And we discussed earlier if you'd still want to keep that as just as LDR for future, and then if they want to do something different at that time, come in.
That would make sense, and because the one thing I was looking at is I'm trying to figure out why we would have put it there. Okay, why we would put it there, because is there something infrastructurally that's going through there that I'm not seeing or that I don't know about, or is there a plan there, or, yeah, because the road's further. Oh, yeah, exactly. So I'm just trying to figure out why that would have been there. So I think if we just leave it LDR to start, and then can go from there.
The new alignment's somewhere up in here.
Okay.
It's kind of way up.
And then just a comment, and I don't think they're here, the owners of the Pelican Point itself.
No, they're not.
I don't think they are. But with the mixed waterfront, we actually have the ability to take the historic aspect of it and focus on that. So I think it actually works out really well for them. It's to their advantage, I think. So I think we can help them and help allay their fears a little bit that, yeah. So, and I would love to find out more about the history of that area, because I actually didn't realize that there was anything down there, so that's kind of cool. So I'd love to find out more. Exactly, yeah. So those are my basic comments, and I wholeheartedly agree with Councilman McComber that we should table the majority of this item so that we can get everything cleaned up and come back and say, here it is.
Great, thank you, Councilman Barch. Councilman Podesta.
All right, so I have about 20 items to go over. I'm just kidding. The main question I had was with the Fox Hollow area. So we have the two regional commercials there, and I was just wondering, in this land use, is that where, because I know we had discussions in the past where developers trying to split some of that regional commercial be up by Foothill. So do we want to designate that this early on, or do we wait until that gets ironed out with that developer?
It'd be up to you. And we did have this pocket up here, which is identified, but it's not in the MDA.
Yeah, I think it's more on the
right. So it's these two
west
here.
side of Foothill, wasn't it? I don't remember it being right there.
Yeah, there's talk at one time of moving it up here.
Yeah.
I think we decided to just kind of.
It's just too early. Yeah. Okay.
I think this kind of helps talk about the fact that we do eventually want commercial, and we see commercial up here, and we'll start with the kind of the neighborhood and see where it goes from there. And if we decide we needed regional, we will be more than amenable at that point to say, yes, we would love more regional commercial. So.
Okay. And then just last one was item 31, that I agree with the rest of the council on that. So.
All right, well, thank you very much, Councilman Podesta. With that, I will entertain a motion on
Item 6.
Item 6.
I'll move. I got to get closer. There we go. I move that we table the code amendment title 1904 General Plan Use Map Ordinance 1814 dated today for items 1 through 30 and 32 through 42. And we approve item 31 with the land owner proposal number 3, but modifying the 10.5 acreage from high density to office space.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Can we add in there also that we direct staff to address the other items that we discussed tonight and do whatever noticing they need to do in order to do so?
I think through further discussion, as stated.
Yes.
So seconded.
Can I ask a question for discussion? Is it time?
Yep, it's for discussion.
Did I get that motion right? We're approving 31 and tabling 1 through 30 and 32 through 42.
I think so, but David is the one that's been looking at this more closely. It sounded fine to me.
Yeah.
You were really specific, which is good.
Yep.
Okay. Great, so I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Councilman Podeska? Aye. Wilden?
Aye.
As Mayor Pro Temp, I do vote aye. Councilwoman Barch?
Aye.
And Porter? Aye. All right. Motion passes unanimously both ways.
And there was thought that obviously you may or may not have a July 3rd now. Mark will look into that tomorrow with staff, and so if it is, we'll try and get this on that meeting. I'm going on vacation that week, so if I can get everything done and taken care of, somebody else will then represent
You know what, I actually would prefer, let's just not have it on July 3rd, because 2 council members would be gone, and I think that this is something that's so important that we just, with vacation, everything going on, and we gave you a ton, so let's just do it in mid-July.
Okay.
And if we need to renotice, because we're adding some stuff.
It gives us some time. Perfect, great. Was that it for us? Now we're going to the closed session? Okay, I'll take a motion.
I'll move that we move to closed session for the reasons stated on the agenda.
I have a first and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Oh, and do you know who needs to stay?